at CTC right now, I am the best CEO I've ever been because I suffered extreme failure in 2022.
Yes.
In a way that I was ready to quit. But I would, if you gave me the choice, make it never happen to me.
The hardest year of my marriage, yeah. I say the exact same thing about. People have said, well, didn't you learn so much? Didn't you grow so much closer? And my answer is no, I would. If I could go back, I would not have done that.
Yes, you are right. It builds resilience.
Yeah.
It made me more conscious, more capable, have to survive. And if I could go back, I would make it not happen.
Today on the Andrew Faris podcast, I've got Taylor Holiday, my very good friend and the CEO of Common Thread Collective, for a wide-ranging episode recorded in my backyard. On the show today, we're talking about how to generate negative CAC in your ads so that you actually get paid to acquire customers. We discuss the question, do you have an obligation to grow your business? We talk about whether or not it's a good to suffer in business, and we hit you with each of our favorite meta ads tactics, really specifically right now. A small note on this, because we recorded this live in my backyard, we had some problems with the audio. My voice is a little louder than Taylor's. We'll fix that next time we do an episode like this. Hang in there. It's a really good conversation. You're going to love it. Me and Taylor at my house, in my backyard. Enjoy. All right, Taylor.
What's up?
It does feel funny to sit this close to you. Yeah. We don't.
Restaurant here.
Yeah, I feel. How do you feel most comfortable? Do you feel most comfortable looking at the screen? I mean, looking at the computer.
Look at each other. Look at the screen.
Look a little back and forth. Yeah.
I think we'll turn into more conversational.
I think maybe as the drinks happen a little bit. You've got a Manhattan that I made you. So, two things about this. First of all, this rye, I might have made it. It might be a faux pas for me to not just drink it straight.
Ooh.
I don't know, but it was sent to me by your friend of mine, Edward Wimmer.
Legend.
Legend, Road ID, Dog ID. He's been in e-commerce maybe for longer than anybody that I know.
Yeah. And also the inspiration for my hair tonight.
It's super delicious. Edward's in Cincinnati, which is, of course, across the border from Kentucky, where they have...
on the Kentucky side.
Oh, is he?
Mm-hmm.
Well, but the company's in Cincinnati, right?
Yeah. Cincinnati, Ohio, but he's on the Kentucky side of the bridge.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, the point is they're very close to each other. And so he has access to legit Kentucky bourbon and rye. And so he sent me this very nicely. It was very kind of him to do. He sent me a bottle of bourbon, and then I just took a call. At some point we talked because he's just great. And I think we did a coaching call. And then afterwards, he just sent it to me because we're, talking about it a little bit. And then he said, oh, the rye's even better. I said, that's awesome. I love rye. And then boom, the rye showed up after he'd already sent me the bourbon.
Well, thank you, Mr. Wimmer. We love you and appreciate you.
Made with Angostura bitters. And there's a reason I put this out here too. I think this is some of the all-time great packaging in the history of the world.
The too big label?
Yes. I think it's a work of genius because the story I've heard about this, have you ever heard about this?
No, it feels very Purple Cow, though.
I don't know what Purple Cow is.
Seth Godin's idea that you drive along, you don't look at any of the black and white cows, but if there was a purple one, you would. And I could just mount it on a shelf, every label fits right.
Exactly. Yeah. So, if you go into a grocery store in the liquor aisle, you will immediately know Angostura bitters. And I don't even know another bitters company.
Yeah.
They just are the bitters of record.
Yeah.
And what I've heard is it was early in the company, somebody printed labels that were too big.
Yep.
And they didn't have enough money until they put them on there. And then they realized, wait a minute, this is kind of genius. And so anyway,
That's a good start to what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
That was did you plan that?
Just when I was inside, I thought it'll got to get the conversation going.
Yeah. So the inspiration here is the random show. If you've ever listened to Tim.
I'm a really experienced podcaster, Taylor. Yeah. I know how to do this.
Tim Faris and Kevin Rose, good friends, they kind of get together and chat over a bottle of wine. And Andrew and I have been meaning to do a podcast together recently. And it was sort of hey, let's just do it in person. Let's just get together and talk and think about some things that we would want to talk about that are not totally all e-commerce related. But
we live 40 minutes away from each other.
Yeah, which would be 7,000 miles.
Yeah, at this stage of life, especially with small kids and stuff. You drove, thank you. We're at my house. Thank you for that.
Yeah. So we sort of pre-gamed a little bit. We built an outline of, hey, if we could talk about a bunch of stuff, what are you thinking about? What's interesting to you? And normally these are Marco Polos that Andrew and I trade. And now we're just going to try this every so often, maybe once a quarter or so, just get together and do our own version of the random show. So we'd love to hear. We're going to cross-publish this on both his podcast and ours, the e-commerce playbook podcast and the Andrew Faris podcast. So
it's my one last claim on the e-commerce playbook podcast, which used to be my podcast.
That's right. Yeah. So the goal will be that once a quarter we cross both of these. So we'd love to hear it. What other topics is this interesting to you to hear us chat beyond just the tactical e-commerce stuff? We'll get there to some of it, I'm sure, but we're going to a little bit broader.
Well, we hadn't talked about this. I was thinking we kind of start tactical for the Maytabs of the
Just
world.
the ones that showed up and were like, I'm leaving.
Yeah. If we spend 40 minutes on family and fitness, people are going to like turn it off. But I think we can start because our Marco Polos are like, it's very like what's top of mind for you right now kind of stuff. Like you see something happen in an account and you go like, dude, what about this? You know,
you have a call with someone, you learn something interesting.
Right. Have you seen this brand? They're doing this crazy thing, you know, whatever. And so I think we can start there and then.
Okay, so I think we both have a list, and we could just sort of trade punches here, go with what we think is the most interesting.
Okay, so, why don't you start?
So if we're going to start with tactical, then...
Yeah, or business observation. Business could be tactical.
So the biggest thing that is driving my obsession is... So Kevin, I think I'm going to say his last name wrong, but Spiritu, do you know who I'm talking about? Runs the garden.
Plant Daddy.
Okay, Plant Daddy.
On Twitter? Yeah. All I know is that he seems good on Twitter and strikes me as very smart.
Yes. Okay, so he put out this tweet the other day, and I'm gonna read it.
This is your business obsession, right?
Yes, this is my current business obsession. So he writes, number 3, negative CAC is the secret sauce of most of the creator businesses that you see these days. But it's a double-edged sword. So CAC equals customer acquisition cost. In a normal e-commerce business, this is a positive number, aka you pay to acquire customers via ads. In a content-first business, not only do you tend to not rely on paid acquisition at the start of the business, you actually get paid for the media you create. Okay, so that's the idea of a negative CAC. And he gave me language for something that not only have we done at CTC, and I think it's referential to what we're doing right here, which is to create content that you get sponsors for, that you end up getting paid to create your marketing material.
Yes.
And then I had a follow-on conversation last week with Alan Doan. It's one of my episodes on the podcast. You know Alan? Have you met Alan?
Mm-mm.
So he's one of the founders of the Missouri Star Quote Co.
Oh, then I have. Okay. I think. Or
so
yes.
One of the most outrageous e-commerce businesses in the world, like incredible.
I believe I sent them to you.
Okay. Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
Introduce me to Alan.
And it was exactly
through ECF, right? Or somewhere?
Maybe through here. Or maybe through the podcast or Twitter. I think he just DM'd me on Twitter and he sent me what his business was. And I was like, you need to go to CTC because they had a very good business, but with very little paid from what I understood.
No paid, basically. Yeah. But a 9-figure e-commerce business. And I say that because he said it on my podcast. So
yeah.
I'm not unveiling anything I shouldn't. But
and boatloads of content already made.
Oh, and spend 1.5% of their revenue on marketing. Like one of the best businesses you'll ever see in your life. And
quilting stuff.
And you should listen to he's a genius thinker in the way he goes about this. But on the idea of CAC, okay, they have a magazine subscription. So the core of their business is they generate quilting content. They have 1 million followers on YouTube, and they produce this, a ton of content for YouTube, for Instagram, and it's all about how to quilt. And his whole heart, like Alan's an amazing dude, and he genuinely is trying to create value for these women, his people. They have a city. They built Quilt Town USA. He has this whole opinion on using CapEx as a way to build marketing. It's like the whole thing is genius. But on the idea of negative CAC, the content that they create, he downsells. So they pay a bunch of money to produce great video content, and then they transcribe it into a magazine. And they charge $8 a month for a magazine subscription. And so I said a 9-figure business. The magazine is the number 3 SKU so far this year. So you can imagine how much money they're making off of this magazine as a downsell off the content that they produce for marketing material. And so it's like, how is he able to produce a business where you get that big at 1% marketing as a percentage of revenue? Well, it's tactics like that. And there's something in this that is just really brilliant about the idea that you could get paid to create the material that drives the growth of your business.
I mean, I think if you ask me right now, what is the next thing after Meta?
Mm-hmm.
I think it probably is some version of the organic customer acquisition strategy by leveraging content creation on something like YouTube or who knows about TikTok, right? If it gets banned, but like something like that, and then finding things like that to do. I think in the early days of hearing about people doing this, like I'll go back to Beard Brand. When I first heard about Beard Brand doing it, it felt like it was an almost impossible task for most people to do. And I don't know what it was about that era that felt like Banholtz is like uniquely creative.
Yep.
And so it makes a lot of sense to me that he could go create a bunch of content that drove growth in Beard Brand's business via YouTube. But now it feels like people are kind of learning the tactics to make the recommendation engines work for them really, really well. And then they are doing exactly what you said, which is like the content then becomes an additional source of value, because like one word version of that is just like you get paid AdSense dollars, right, on YouTube. And that's great. That can get you really, really far. Isaac Medeiros has talked about this like a little bit as well. But yeah, that extra layer of turning that stuff into a magazine by making the content really, really good and then getting people to subscribe, especially in the world of like Substack creators where it's like, I subscribe to my favorite baseball writer. I pay $120 a year for Sam Miller's Substack, and I'm happy to because the content's really, really good. And so you could sort of imagine like if the content was good enough, there's a world where you could do this. And I
think about Driveline too. Like, I mean,
well, so I was
their book, and then I bought their, the most recent youth sports book. Like,
so I've had this conversation with them. Driveline Baseball, a client of mine. Again, I can say that because Mike's been on the show, CEO. I mean, people who aren't baseball people don't realize that Driveline's kind of one of the most interesting companies in the world. Like, they're doing crazy stuff in sports. And I help them on this like silly little e-commerce part of their business, which is part of it. But they're actually like this genius group of people, software engineering firm, half baseball coaches. Yeah. And they've talked about the same thing, that like basically maybe they need to move to a really content first strategy because they have a lot of good stuff to talk about. Now, they have a different layer, which is that working with professional athletes in particular basically creates cost on the talent. Yeah. Agents are going to get in the way of that in certain ways. So they would have to maybe do it at the college level, which is a little less compelling to the broader market. So there's like some challenges, I think, for them, but believe me when I say like they have listened to the Isaac Medeiros episode of my show to think about this idea of content driven stuff. And I think what you're saying, to take that to another level where there's actually a subscription product on the back end. That's right. That's not just the YouTube recommendation engine. I think that's really, really interesting. When you say you're obsessed with it, like what else? Well, so I think, are you seeing other businesses do this? Have you seen or are you recommending it? Well, I know you're doing it.
So what I've discovered for years at CTC, B2B marketing is really hard. It's hard to get tight feedback loops. So you can't sort of run the standard like Facebook playbook for your own growth, right? Yeah. So we've had to constantly, and when AO was with us,
Aaron Orndorff.
Yeah, Aaron Orndorff who, by all accounts, is one of the best B2B marketers in the world. Yeah, and creates world-class content. Yep. But when it was only our own written material, right, that was pure expense, and you had to generate an ROI relative to the expense, and Aaron's not cheap, and the team was big, and it was like a lot of work. And what we've sort of unlocked now is that when I make a Bridges series, and it can get sponsors for the content that actually creates positive revenue, and those publishers actually help me with distribution because they have a bunch of audience built in too. Now, all of a sudden, the thing that I've created actually is a profit center and a marketing dollar at the same time. And and we it's just, I think that's a similar idea to what the guys at Missouri Quilt are doing, or what, if you're running a YouTube channel, you can generate ad dollars on it. It would offset costs.
I sent somebody one of your Bridges episodes today. Yeah. That I thought you should make sure you watch this. Probably you should hire them. And so you're getting the sponsor dollars on them watching it basically. And I just know for a fact that it's so compelling as an explanation for what you guys do that it was like, if you told me like somebody could do that for me and it's like a reasonable price relative to other agency offerings in the same space, it's just night and day. So like, but see, I think what that highlights, and I think the mistake that's possible here, it actually reminds me a little bit of like when you were public about when you had this idea of creating the Real Madrid Academy at CTC, where you were going to get you were going to train up young D2C people instead of hire experienced strategists or whatever.
Bad idea.
Well, so what you said, the reason it ended up being a bad idea was because what Real Madrid's Academy does is it already attracts the best young players in the world. Right. And so you hadn't factored that in, that the talent you were getting at, even at the academy level, wasn't good enough. There's a similar principle here, which is like the reason Bridges works is not because of the content strategy, it's because of the content.
I agree.
It's because when I watched that Bridges episode, I was actually talking to one of my clients about it who had also watched it. Yeah. And I said, I've worked with you for 10 years. Yeah. It's been almost exactly 10 years at this point. That piece of content is 10 years of work.
Well, it's funny. I saw Alex Bayness, who I don't know if you know. He's awesome. Used to work for Trek, and he's one of my favorite people in e-commerce. I always see him at ECF. And
Alex who?
Bayness.
No, I don't know. Yeah.
He's amazing. He used to run all of global e-com for Trek, and now his wife runs a competitor to Figs. And he and his wife are just running it together, and he's just the greatest dude. And we were out that night. he like stopped me. He's like, you are on your hero's journey. Like you have found your thing.
That's right.
This is your thing. And so, but to me, it's no different than Isaac, who is uniquely gifted, or even Alan when you meet him. So it doesn't negate the need for talent or it's the business model is not magic, but
what you said about Alan or Al from Missouri Quilt, right, is like the content's actually really good. It's providing a ton of value to people.
Al, he weirdly, uniquely cares about these women. Like he's a older dude like us, but he cares about these 50-year-old quilting women because it's
that's awesome.
Like he cares about this town in Missouri. Like there's actual, real, genuine, authentic care for the quilting community. Like so. Don't get me wrong, that's still present, but you have to combine. It's sort of like BK Beauty, like Paul. Like I don't know how well you know him, but do you know Paul at BK Beauty?
No.
Okay, so he's blowing up on TikTok shops. They sell the makeup brush, and so everybody's like, "Oh, TikTok shops is valid because of Paul."
Right.
And so I sat with him at ECF the other night. We were talking, and his story, if you listen to it, is his wife was an influencer. He went to film school. For 5 years, they seeded product into the TikTok community so that when the affiliate feature came out, they knew and were uniquely positioned to take it.
Everybody.
In a way that like no one can replicate
today.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so people look at it and they go, oh, TikTok shops is the magic thing. But
false.
Right. And so I think that can be where these things get conflated. But the reality is that margin innovation is this idea that the present construct of just paying Meta as the tax on everything has to be offset somewhere to create disproportionate growth. And that's why creators with an audience are able to do it. So I think there is something to this idea that businesses are going to find ways to offset CAC with revenue in a novel way.
That's the point that's right, which is that you have to, if you want to grow a really big business, you have to find a way to generate revenue that's not tied to ad spend.
You need leverage somewhere.
Yeah. And a really big business. And you can grow a pretty good business. Yeah. But this is right. Like all these tactics come down to these other elements of the business. Like I think, for supplement brands, the answer to that is LTV.
Exactly. That's
right.
The leverage.
It's the leverage is that the customers are drastically more valuable than they are in other agencies. For Isaac Medeiros, it's organic content creation. And part of the reason for that is he's talented. Part of the reason for that is that his product lends to visual content really, really well. For the TikTok shops people, it's that. For, what was I going to say? I think for other brands, the growth lever, this is why omnichannel retail is the growth lever. Right. Essentially, at some point. Simple Modern is a great example. Well, Simple Modern, for them, it's actually like Amazon driven. That's the thing people need to understand about that business is that like what it really started with was like brilliant product strategy on Amazon is the thing that propelled them at first. But then you're right, like what eventually propelled them to the larger numbers was mass retail and some of that.
HexCloud
and then
D2C, all these leverage points.
Exactly. Yeah. D2C is the back end for Simple Modern. It was like they didn't care about it for a long time. And so omnichannel retail, that I think is a good way to think about what's compelling about it for some brands, which is like a question that comes up a lot, which is like, should we go more omnichannel? And to me, it's like, yeah, if you can do meaningful value capture where it really is part value creation at large things, and part of the thing you get there is this additional value capture on the spend you're already spending on your D2C, it can be really, really powerful because all of these clicks and video views and stuff like that right now, if it's just D2C, don't work. So I think maybe that's the principle that I would think about there is like, what is the actual pathway in your business to generating revenue that is not tied directly to ad spend, essentially?
Or to make your ad spend more valuable by being able to capture broader demand.
Yeah.
So Shireen, you were joking about having her come on to do the anti-cost caps episode.
Yeah.
She's always like the number one internet troll about this idea.
Yeah. And also one of the best people on a podcast. So, yeah.
I think you do it because I think she has this really compelling point of view, where our good friend Vince is running their ad account, and I mess with them all the time because if you look at the sort of that on the surface, it's like you guys are trashing money here. But the contention, which I think is a fair one to engage in, is they're the number one product on Sephora. They're crushing in all these alternative channels, and so their demand creation, the ad on Meta, has a broader impact than people who are exclusively attempting to capture all that demand on their website.
That's right,
and that's a leverage. Again, that's leverage, right?
Yeah,
in that opportunity.
Yeah. Okay.
Right,
what should my business strategy be?
I mean, are you just going to keep beating the long form explainer horse?
That's my tactic. That's a tactic, but I might beat that because people need to hear that. People are so wrong about so much creative. It's crazy. Should I do a Taylor was right, or should I do?
People hear that.
I don't think I have a problem admitting when you're right. I feel like I'm willing to do that. I love arguing. Come on. I feel like I love to argue with you, but it's the fifth major sport is arguing with Taylor in the US. Let's do I'm going to say fix the next thing next. Okay, so this is something I think about a lot. So you and I have very different businesses.
Yeah. Are you sort of.
Well, so we are trying to do really different things with our businesses. Yeah. There's a reason, though, that you and I are not competitors right now, that we're going to cross-publish this.
Yeah.
We both serve e-commerce clients. We both offer Meta ad spend as like sort of ostensibly the thing you pay for, as at least part of it, creative development. Our services look pretty similar. I forecast businesses.
Yep.
You forecast businesses. You do it better than I do. That's okay. But you have an agency with a bunch of people working for you doing this. I am capped on my client role. And you and I were just talking about that before we started recording this. And so as I think about my business, here's something I've realized. I tell every entrepreneur that I deal with, like, at some point, I asked them this question, and you asked them this question. I think I've even gotten this question from you, which is like, what are your goals? Because I want to know that if like they're going to tell me their goals, that I can serve their goals in some way, that I actually think I can accomplish what they're trying to do, and the conversation will kind of end if they're trying to do a goal that I just think is impossible. If somebody comes to me and says, we want to do $100 million next year and we're doing 10 now, then I might just be like, great, find somebody hackier than me. Like, I don't know, maybe it can be done. I don't know, but like, yeah. So I think, even when I think about like the bridges episode that I was referring to earlier, which goes through your forecasting method, which makes a lot of sense for a larger business, where it is you're forecasting daily campaign budgets in Meta ads, right, for clients. I am not doing that for my clients, and I'm not doing anything close to that in my business for AJF growth.
Yep.
And so what I have continued to think about is I have almost no long-term goal for my brand or for AJF growth. I sort of put a goal out there because I have a small team now, and I thought it was probably a good idea for them to have some idea of what success was. But to be totally honest with you, I don't really care that much about it as long as the business works and they get paid and I can pay my family and stuff like that. I don't have a number that it doesn't actually motivate me very much to do that. Instead, and this is probably the thing that I'm thinking about from a broader business perspective, I feel very comfortable with a strategy that just says fix the next thing next. And I'm not really trying to build a pathway. And again, like I seriously tell brands all the time in e-commerce, they need to plot out their course for multiple years and everything. Now I actually think in e-commerce, this probably doesn't really work that well, because in e-commerce, you actually do need to think about the value of a customer in a way that directly dictates the dollars you're going to spend on ads. And I think that's pretty different than my business. But yeah, this is the thing that I'm thinking about a lot. And I think what it reflects is the question of essentially like business goals. Like I just don't think that every business needs to have very clear mid to long-term goals unless they want to get really big. If they want to get really big, you probably have, if you're going to get 20, 40, 100 people involved in your business, you probably have to have some idea of where you're going, because at some point you just have to plan. Like it's just a reality of the details. But for me, what I'm thinking about is even in the sort of, if I was the CEO, even of that business, I think I would be pretty comfortable with the idea that my main job is to just fix the next thing next. Okay, so that's like a half-baked thought. Well, so tell me what you think about that.
Do you remember, we used to do at CTC, remember the First Thing song?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so at
Richard Gaffin.
Richard Gaffin
wrote the First Thing.
Ecommerce Playbook podcast. Used to write a song. And this is Josh.
The best guitar player I personally know.
Joshua Darmo, who runs Bamboo, CEO of Bamboo, used to introduce this thing at CTC that was First Thing. And the idea was, what's the most important thing to do this week? And do that before you do anything else. And so we used to stand up at company meetings and everybody would declare their first thing. And the idea was, you're going to leave this meeting right now and you're going to go do that. Nothing else until that thing is done. Mm-hmm. My question is, what's the framework for answering the question? What's next? So I think about like...
Well, I can tell you the answer.
Well, let's take the conversation that we had. I'm going to push back on that. I don't actually think you know. Because you don't have a framework to use against, which is what the long-term objective is.
Well, the funny thing is I do, but go ahead.
Well, but my experience of the conversation we were having just before about this client, that client, is entirely predicated on understanding what the long-term goal is. And what I think is that right now you are trying to discover what the actual maximum potential is of the present thing.
Yes.
And so...
Which is exactly what fixing the next thing next is.
But what do you mean? Well,
I mean, like, part of the thing that keeps happening is like I I have a new understanding of what the maximum potential is based off of what happens next. And I don't think that could have happened in the same way 6 months ago as it happens today.
But I think that you could actually get to the answer non-experientially. But what lots of people do is they have to live it to actually accept it. Is that there actually isn't an answer that you could probably accept and that you could logically get to, but until you've actually lived it, and experienced the emotion of what it would cost you to live into it, like then it's not actually real to you.
So I think part of the thing that's happening here is like I don't really want to hold myself accountable to it. I think that's part of the idea to some goal that I create because I don't care that much about the goal. So then
Why would you create a goal you don't care about?
So I don't do that, right? Exactly. This is exactly the point. I
go
don't
to the gym in the morning and you just like
I don't really have serious fitness goals.
What do you mean?
I want to work out 3 to 4 days a week because it's good for me. I like doing it. It feels like playing sports. I love playing sports because I do CrossFit. So it feels like there's like a time goal in a given workout or a weight goal or whatever it is, right? So it's got like a gamified kind of element to it. And so, but I weigh myself when I get to somebody's house that has a scale because it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
I don't have any muscle goal or anything. Like it's fun to hit a new number when I get on the bench and bench press, but I don't really care. I just know I feel good when I do it. I want to do that.
Maybe that's the motivation.
What I believe is that if I can stay consistent with CrossFit for a long period of time, I'll feel good. I'll be as healthy as I can reasonably be without building my whole life around fitness and health. And so solving the next thing next is like my push-ups are terrible. So when they come up, I try to work at them.
But why?
Because it's fun to get better at things.
So I think that it sounds to me like in many of these cases, you're optimizing for an experience, which is what I did, I think, for the first probably 7 years of my business at CPC was entirely about an experience.
Yeah.
And it was entirely predicated on the idea of like the highest value is like, I love this thing. And as long as that remains true, then persist in that action.
Yeah.
So I think that in some ways what it is you're rejecting examining your behavior for the actual source of the motivation.
Yeah. I think the biggest question for me is the most live question in my business is like, how hard should I push to build a bigger thing? And there's one thing external to me, and I can just tell you, this is definitely not the thing it does not get me out of bed in the morning, except in the sense that it feels like a game to win, and I like winning games.
Yeah.
But it feels that arbitrary to me. There's one thing that says like, you should go build the biggest business you can to make the most money you can. And that's the point of business. And that's like the thing you should go do.
And I think that's true. So I think that's like there's very few things that I find to be objective truth. So I'm going to reject that premise. But I think that's what business is, no matter what anybody pretends it is.
Yeah, and I actually appreciate that perspective. I think more people should be honest about that. I think actually that's what is driving a lot of people who won't say that with clarity. You know, I always think about this when I see the mission statement of companies where I'm like, no, your mission statement is to make the most money possible. That's what the mission statement is. In fact, when I see people sort of hip presenters at conferences or whatever talk about it's so important to have a mission that people can rally behind. It's like, what? The mission is for the equity holders to maximize their enterprise value.
Which in a capitalist society, I think it's an externality that you don't actually get to decide. And that's part of my thing is that like we exist inside of a system that moves in a very specific way where the employees and things are motivated in ways that you don't actually get to control.
That's right.
So it would be like joining a basketball league and starting the game and saying, I'm playing for some other reason than to score more points than the other team. And everybody could go like, okay, you're allowed to say whatever you want.
Yeah.
But the entire premise of this thing is all predicated on whoever scores the most points wins. So no matter what you say in the context of that, there's a bigger truth than you.
But in business, there's not another team. You're not trying to beat a team.
There is.
Well, maybe. So I don't think so. I think if you define winning as beating all the other teams, it creates. So I mean, this is exactly the thing for me. Is like I feel really comfortable on the one hand saying this is like a game. Mm-hmm. And this is actually the thing that motivates me. I kind of look at my forecast for AGF growth and I go, how do I make the number go up? And that's because it's inherent to the activity. And at the same time, there are some things I'm not willing to sacrifice to do that.
Okay, now I agree with this. Now, I think very similarly, which is that I'm willing to lose the game, but that doesn't change what the game is. So I'm willing to accept that some people beat me.
Yeah.
I've been beat by my competitors in my space. I've been beat.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to actually accept it because for me, there's a level that the consequence of which I'm not willing to accept from a familial thing, from a bunch of reasons. But that doesn't change the game that I'm in. It just means I lose.
Yeah. The thing is, like, basketball actually is a constrained thing. For one thing, it is necessarily the case that one team wins and another team loses. There's no world in which both teams win. Whereas I think you and I are both winning right now. I don't think the fact that you have a bigger EBITDA than me means that you're beating me, even though we're ostensibly in the same case. I just think it means that we're after really different things. And I don't have a problem with that. I'm Team Taylor, man. I want you to have the biggest EBITDA that you can get. That's great. I refer you clients, right? Like, I'm happy to do it, right? Like, but that's where I think that breaks down. And there is a constraint here. And so the point is, like, for me, I'm always trying to play this back and forth, which is well, because, like, if the point of the game is to win, Taylor, why don't you work 80 hours a week? Well, maybe you do.
Because I'm willing to lose the game because I'm playing multiple games at once.
Yeah.
I'm playing the marriage game.
Yeah.
I'm playing the father game. I'm playing a bunch of games at the same. I'm playing my personal health.
Yeah, but then your whole thing breaks apart because what you're saying is that, like, then it is just for fun for you, right? It's a game that you're willing to lose. Then you're not playing to win.
I'm playing to win to a certain level.
No, you're not.
Yes,
because no, you said there's another team that's beating you.
They are beating me.
So in that case, the analogy breaks down.
No, I can accept that there is somebody better than me. There is a real cost that somebody's willing to pay that I'm not.
Yeah.
I listened to, have you listened to, you're probably not a basketball guy, but LeBron and JJ Redick have started a podcast together.
I've just heard about it.
2 episodes.
Yeah.
On the first episode, LeBron says that to be at his level, it comes at the personal expense of the people closest to him. And he goes, I acknowledge I am selfish for the pursuit of this thing.
Yeah. That's great.
He's willing to pay the price, and therefore he is the greatest of all time.
Yeah.
You don't get to be LeBron and not pay the price.
That's right. So, I agree.
I don't get to be LeBron.
Yeah. But then you're not, then...
It doesn't mean that there's not a game going on that somebody's LeBron. Somebody's better than me.
Yeah.
They're bigger than me. They have more money than me. They have everything.
But I just don't...
Industry.
You're asserting this... Yeah. You're asserting this idea that is an objective weighting of who is winning and who's not. And I'm suggesting...
the game of business.
Yeah. So maybe there's a
game of life.
Right.
There's a separate, I think,
that business is subsumed by this game. Right.
So exactly inside of an American capitalist society, everything will move towards this direction.
Yeah.
Inevitably.
Yeah.
And I watch people like this is a thing. Another podcast guest of yours, Jess from Higher Fire Team, I think hates me because he has this. No, I don't mean that, Jess. You're awesome. I think you're great.
He's a great dude. Yeah.
But like he has this deep, entrenched motivation to say, I will not be big. And I am happy in the size that I am. And I just go, oh, okay, that's a thing that won't exist in 10 years.
Yeah. And so what I think is definitely right, and I think I've seen other people point this out, is that the reason it's really hard for businesses to stay in stasis, and maybe you pointed this out, maybe somebody else, is that employees want to grow.
Exactly. Because
you have to...
Again, the system that you're in is not defined.
Well, yeah. The thing is, it's possible though. You could theoretically say that's fine. We will take somebody at a lower level and replace them, and it will come at the cost of our thing. Or you can try to grow with them if you want to keep them. But at that point, the reason I'm trying to grow is not necessarily to grow my EBITDA per se. The reason I'm trying to grow is because I like the way this is set up with this person. I need to provide them more value. Right.
Well, but again, and because you're inside...
But that's a different game entirely.
No, but because you're inside of a capitalist system, you only have one choice, which is to grow. Yeah,
unless the people who you attract feel the same way, which is like they're actually willing to take less because they would rather exist in a workplace. There many people all over the place are willing to trade money for other benefits.
Tell me about them. I'd like to meet them.
They probably don't exist in our space that much.
I don't know them.
Yeah, I don't think they do. I think the very
behave very differently.
Totally. The very people's stated preferences and revealed preferences on this are quite different. But the classic the classic example of this is that I'm sort of on a societal level is younger mothers very often are willing to trade more flexibility in a job for pay. And this is like a observed thing from a woman who just won the Nobel in economics, right? This is like part of the reason for the gender gap, or gender pay gap. So in that respect, they value something differently than they value pay. Now in that case, it's flexibility.
But I also think that that's actually consistent with Western American capitalism in terms of how gender roles are perceived. So I think it's probably that's actually probably built into the premise of the game that we're playing.
Yeah.
And the difference between gender.
But that person is still doing the thing for whatever reason, right? They're doing the thing that you're saying that people don't do, which is like they're not necessarily always intensely money driven. But I agree with you in a highly entrepreneurial space like ours. It's just like it attracts people who are like trying to grow and do more things all the time, you know?
Yeah, it's just like who's celebrated. What is it like?
Yeah.
Who have you chosen to have on your podcast? Why did you have Ju Ryu on the podcast? Why?
Yeah.
Because she sold her company for $500 million.
Yeah, right.
She won, and
Yeah.
so she should be celebrated and asked questions and
Yeah.
wondered about. And,
Yeah.
why are the operators so popular? Because they all run 9-figure businesses, and
Yeah.
it's like it's the operators not. It's just it's so deeply ingrained
Yeah.
into the premise
Yeah.
that it's like I think resistance is futile.
Yeah.
Even like I watch you, and
Yeah.
there's this question too, which is one of the things I put, and this is actually what Edward and I talked about, which is that do you have some sort of underlying obligation to maximizing your potential in this game? Is there like are you letting down the gift that you have in some capacity to play a small game?
I mean, it's funny. Like I think this is actually the much more compelling question to me than an EBITDA goal per se, or like a revenue goal per se, which is a stewardship goal or like a stewardship sense, right? So, I mean, you know, like I'm a Christian, I'm a person of faith. I think sometimes about, I view the world through the lens of there's an element where like God has made me in certain ways and given me certain responsibilities. I think about my family or something like that, right? This is sort of the obvious ones. I have kids, and part of my role is to steward my relationship with my boys in a way that is they're my responsibility uniquely, in a way that they're nobody else's besides my wife's. And even that, there's like some different ways in which that happens in our relationship. So I think about that same kind of thought with business, which is like, should I push myself harder to do something larger precisely because I think I have the capacity to?
Right. Well, it'd be like going to the gym and deciding that you're only going to lift 135 pounds on bench and you're never going to do that.
I think a better analogy is, what if you are 6'8"?
Right. If you're born like LeBron.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, because I couldn't be LeBron, right? Like even no matter how hard I work, I'm not going to be LeBron. And in fact, I couldn't have made it to the NBA if it was all I worked on my whole life. I don't think. I just am not athletic enough. So yeah, I think that's a more interesting question to me. And that actually is the thing that pushes me much more than a goal for the sake of winning a capitalist game, because I don't really value, like I said, I like making more money because it feels the same as like when I was a very small child and I got pretty good at Chinese checkers at like a 7-year-old. And I was like, I want to play Chinese checkers because I can beat people at it. You know, it's fun. That's what it feels like to me. It doesn't, you know, I got into this world because of a fantasy baseball league you and I were in, right? Like, and so like, it is exactly that thing to me. That's what it feels like. It's a game to win. It's a game to play. It's not, otherwise I don't care very much about the rest of it. But yeah, the question of, is there an obligation? So what was your answer to Edward, or what do you think? Do you have
the criticism?
How about you? You are uniquely talented.
I would say the number one thing I get from mentors in my life is criticism of the business I'm choosing to participate in every day.
Yeah.
As in,
it's not a big enough opportunity.
Right.
Yeah.
So people tell me this all the time and I kind of reflect on it. Like, why do they keep saying this to me? And in some ways it's like intended to be a compliment, but it feels belittling. Like it's a weird interaction. And even talking about it feels like some sort of lame thing, like, I should deserve to be doing something more. Like, part of it's I'm 10 years into the journey, and so I feel like entrenched in it in this way that that is about finishing a story that matters to me. But I think that right now I've created this framework for what I value in life around these 3 goals. And the reason for that is that I think that marriage is the hardest game that you can play in human relationship. And so I think it's the highest achievement of human relationship to have a sustained 50-year marriage. That's my framework. 2 is be best friends with my adult children. I didn't choose to bring them into the world. I feel a unique obligation to their well-being.
You didn't choose?
I mean, they didn't choose to be brought into the world. I chose to bring them into the world. I feel a unique obligation to their care. And to me, the idea that they would choose me in relationship at the end of that would be a signal that I did something that they valued. Yeah. And then post-economic, by the time I'm 40, is just a way to say that, like, I hate being beholden to people for money. So I'd like to not be. Yeah. But I recognize that there's nothing objectively good about any of those things in my mind.
You don't think there's something objectively good about dying married to your wife?
I really don't. I don't know that that's the case. I don't know that marriage is a really it's a weird construct. It's like really hard and requires a lot of sacrifice of life experiences that you could have. That I don't know what's good. I don't. Sure. I'm choosing it right now. I think it's the best option.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know. Like sometimes I think about like what would it be like to be Ryan Gosling? Would I choose the same thing? Like would that actually be the best choice if I was rich and famous and the most beautiful person on earth? I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I don't know what those choices are.
Why don't you approach a data-driven answer to that?
Which is what? How many people get to...
Married people are meaningfully happier than non-married people.
What is happiness?
Well, there's a lot of different ways.
Is that the point?
I mean, I think you could interrogate the data about that.
About the point of life?
You could. I mean, I think that's not going to be a data question, the point of life. But I think to the question of the point, I mean, the point of life and what's going to give you the most joy are two different things. But I think I actually think they're one thing. But to the point of what you said about Ryan Gosling, I mean, one way you could answer that question would be to take a data-driven approach to it, and that would.
Well, I don't know how many people get. You can't create counterfactual experiences for Ryan Gosling relative to the choices that he makes.
Yeah.
Right. Like where he's like celibate, married to one woman for 60 years, and then one where he's not.
You can't, but you could take the average that you see across things and see how sociologists measure this kind of thing, right? There is a field called sociology where people try to exactly get at this kind of thing, and you could attempt a data, and you would do all the things you would do if I presented to you a spreadsheet about whether or not, I don't know, for example, comments on ads matter, right. And you would interrogate that data, and you would try to answer, and you say, where's it a good study, where's it a bad study, right? I'm saying you could approach this question that same way and bring all of your same concerns about it. So,
right. And I think you could get to an aggregate view of an average answer for humanity that would be like broadly true and specifically false.
Sure.
And I think that's part of the challenge of it. And then you get to definitions of words of like happiness or joy or experience of these things. And like, so that brings to one of the other points, which is
let me just pause there and note. Yes, I'm speaking in terms of averages. I recognize that many people who are listening or watching may have different experiences than this, and I'm not trying to, condescend to anybody's experience. I'm speaking in terms of averages.
So that's the challenge with averages and data, which is like, again, this is probabilistic thinking or anything else.
Right.
Where when you say, even the comment thing is such a good example where what everyone's provocation or response to that often is, but this one time, this thing happened where the comments made a difference. And
that's totally possible.
Yes.
Right.
I could totally concede that is true. And what I'm saying is true.
Right. Just a couple weeks ago, I reached out to my friends at More Staffing and told them I would like to add a 5th team member from the Philippines to my business. And quickly, they responded to me to get the search started. Very, very quickly understood exactly what I was looking for and who they should be helping me to find. And hopefully in the next couple of weeks, I will have another team member who will be as great as the rest of my team from the Philippines. I have had 4 for a while. I've worked with them for a while. Not only have I had no problems with them, but they've been a core reason my business has thrived in the last year. I love working with More Staffing. The entire team that I have in the Philippines is from them. They recruit, onboard, coach, train, give all kinds of support to the incredible talent that is available to your business in the Philippines. And so the value proposition is really, really simple here, and it makes all the sense in the world. If you already have a remote team, go look for incredible talent from the Philippines, where you will find people who you can pay a great rate in the Philippines, which means you'll attract good quality talent, and yet it will still be less than domestic rates in the US. Everybody wins in that scenario, including your business at the end of the day. It's that simple. And honestly, I mean this when I say, I simply don't know why at this point you would not go look in the Philippines for incredible talent with my friends at More Staffing, for whatever part of your business you are trying to add talent to. Go to morenow.co/AF. That's morenow.co/AF, and they will help you find those people in your business. Go to morenow.co/AF. Ask them about who is available for the position that you need. See if they can help you find it. I think you will be absolutely thrilled with the talent that you get and the price that you pay. But this is actually a good like Facebook tactic thing or whatever, which is that like people I think do this a lot with a lot of Facebook tactics, which is they go like, the one I hear a lot is creative testing. People get so mad at me about the idea that I'm saying you should not build creative testing campaigns. I mean, your way of framing it is slightly different than mine, but I think we basically agree. And my point, just that let the machine decide which ones. And the response I get all the time is, yeah, but this one time I ran this ad that was getting no spend when I ran it on the machine learning, but then I forced spend to it and it worked great. And then it spent a bunch more and became my best ad. And my answer to that is that's totally possible, but I'm interested in probabilistic forecasting and I have to play. I'm not trying to generally create outlier outcomes in terms of like those sorts of things. For something like the distribution of my ad spend, I want probabilistic forecasting that, yes, will be wrong, because all forecasting is inherently flawed, and all probabilistic forecasting is inherently flawed. And the classic example of this is 538's prediction of Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump, right? And they said, what was it? Hillary Clinton could win 25% of the, or Trump would win 25% of the time. And everybody said, oh, 538 got it totally wrong. And it's like, 25% is a lot. That's a lot of times. It's not the most times, but it's a real chance, So anyway, like I think this is something people do all the time with that, though, which is that they misunderstand the relationship between the individual outlier thing versus what you should expect in the aggregate. And yeah.
And I also think that what's hard is that when you're dealing with one account and you're making decisions about what is working there versus the seat that you and I sit in, which is trying to make a recommendation of what is most likely to occur.
Yeah.
Is that those are very different things. It may be true that in your account, this specific tactic is working, and therefore you should continue to deploy that tactic, while also being true that it's right that I don't recommend it.
And on the average, that you should have principles of what to do and what not to do. Because the other thing I despise the most, this actually could have been my business strategy, my business observation, my business obsession right now, which is like, people just love to say every account is different. Things are always changing all the time. And I think that's just the biggest fool's errand. Like, I'm going the extreme other end of that. I am like, no. I want a D2C doctrinal statement. I've actually thought about putting, to bring back Edward Wimmer, I told him I was thinking about putting together a document of like the 10 commandments of D2C media buying. And people would be annoyed at lots of them because I'd be able to break them all the time, But like, to frame it that, like, I think people need to have, I just did an episode about this, like, you need to have point of view and perspective. And yes, change it when the data changes. Yes, there may be times when it will not apply to your specific account, but stop going back and interrogating the fundamentals. Like, instead, stick your feet into the fundamentals and then go do things that are actually unique to your business, like the way your product interacts with your customer, which is unique to your business, Yeah.
And so I think that's a hard principle. But I think it underlies, though, this back to this question of like the business. It's like, what is the fundamentals of business? And then what are the reasons that you would deviate from it?
Yeah.
It gets to this, one of the points, I'll go back to my next thing, which is it, so I wrote down in our sheet here, is it important to maximize your potential?
Okay, this is good.
And so there was this big viral thread that,
it was a video, right?
Who was he was giving a talk to Stanford.
I'm going to pour you in there a bit of whiskey.
And he was giving a speech about suffering, or about his experience building NVIDIA.
Yeah. And
he was speaking to Stanford students, and he was basically like, and I'm going to TLDR this, and you should watch it because
it is good. Yeah.
I misrepresent the context in some way.
Yeah. But we'll put the link in the show notes. I'm going to jot that down.
He says, I wish you suffering, because suffering is the only way to build resilience, and resilience is the key to success. And so my question in listening to that was like, is this a worthwhile trade? Is resilience a worthwhile trade for suffering? And should you pursue suffering for the sake of developing more resilience so that you can maximize your success? And I was like, you know what? I might be willing to have less success for less suffering. And I think that I would never wish that on somebody. I actually think about this a lot with my kids, right?
Yep.
It's like, would I offer them suffering for the sake of their resilience?
Yeah.
And
do you do that in your parenting?
So first of all, I think we'd have to agree on the term suffering. I don't think hardship, or like, I don't think
that's a good,
the gym and running hard on the treadmill is suffering.
You say that, but think about how hard it is for some people. I think, especially for my friends who, you were a professional athlete,
right?
So I think there's an element.
I don't know that I ever suffered in my training.
Exactly.
That word is so dramatic.
Exactly. I think that there are some people for whom going to the gym is suffering. I think at the very least, it's emotionally suffering. I think about some of my friends. Here's the closest experience I can do to this. And I think, again, this is probably not quite there. I graduated high school, 6'2", probably 150 pounds. Yeah. I am just built incredibly stringy. Yeah. And I didn't do anything to select being skinny. I just have been a skinny dude my whole life. I am currently.
So I can validate.
Yes, right. We were friends in junior high. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's part of the reason I didn't play baseball for longer. I just couldn't hit the ball or throw the ball far enough or hard enough, right? Because I just wasn't big enough, and I didn't work out. I didn't know how to do it in high school, whatever. So, right. I was reasonably skilled. I just wasn't strong enough. So I remember going to the CrossFit gym. I've been in the CrossFit gym a lot of times with women who are stronger than me. And as a dude, this gets at your dudeness a little bit, like it's like the thing to be strong, right? Or whatever. And I had to accept the fact that I was going to really suck at the workouts in the beginning.
Okay.
And I was going to lift a lot less weight than other people, including than some of the women in the gym. Now, I think that's not that much suffering still.
Yeah, I was going to say, where does the suffering start?
Right. But I mean, it was emotionally taxing on me at first, and I had to work through that. And I think that's not that extreme an example of some people's relationship to the gym. I think of some of my friends who have struggled with their weight at different times, and going to the gym for them is a brutal experience at first. That's what I think.
Yeah, and this is a spectrum. And so I
Right.
think it's hard to draw lines of where these words begin between, like, I have, and we could all pick some extreme example of,
Yeah.
I have, some close family friends that have had to, like, decide to give up on their daughter because of her heroin addiction.
Yeah.
And I watch
Brutal.
them
Yeah. Right.
suffer.
Yes. Right.
And
I think that's fair. I think that's fair.
want that for no one.
Yes.
And whatever resilience they develop in the name of that,
That's right.
I would want for nobody. But going in the cold plunge, like, okay, yeah, learning to control your body in a moment of, like, where your vagal nerve.
This is a good point you're making.
I just want to draw a line of what we're offering to people in this
Right.
statement about, I wish you suffering. And you're
Yeah.
like, well, maybe, but I think whatever and I don't.
Well, so,
I don't
okay,
even
so-
disagree that could build resilience.
Yeah.
Like that kind of extreme suffering would make you resilient.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I don't want to be that resilient.
Yeah.
Like, I'll be less
No,
resilient.
I think about this all the time. I mean, like, I think you should choose your suffering as part of it, right? As much as you're able to, right? Is that you should decide which things you're willing to suffer for. And this goes back to the, like, business game thing. Like, I think part of the reason I'm not trying to grow a bigger thing is because when I think about what it would take to get there, it requires a bunch of challenges and stress that maybe I could accomplish, but that right now I think I'm stewarding things fine, and I'm not willing to do that. Now
And I
that
wish
may
it could be-
that may change when I don't have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old.
Well, he says in an interview, the CEO of NVIDIA, one of the 3 most valuable companies in the world, it's an interview that said, like, if you could go back to yourself when you were starting, what would you say? And his answer was, don't do it.
Yes.
So he's sitting in the reward of it. And he's saying, looking back to himself, what would he say? And his answer is, don't.
Do you think he believes that?
I can only take him at his word.
Right.
I don't know him.
So this is what part of what I was going to say is, like, I think you're straw manning him a little bit. You're sort of
just taking him at his
no on the suffering thing. Like, on the suffering thing, I think if you interpret what he's saying there in the context of talking to a room full of Stanford people, I think what he's probably saying, I would have to go back and watch the clip, is that the obstacle is the way, essentially. And that would be a more fair interpretation of what he's saying. And that probably what he's saying is that, like, the challenges are the thing that create value. And I think, knowing you would say the same thing.
So I both agree with the premise, which is to say that, and I'll say this, at CTC right now, I am the best CEO I've ever been.
There's no question.
Because I suffered extreme failure in 2022.
Yes.
In a way that I was ready to quit. But I would, if you gave me the choice, make it never happen to me. And so
Yeah.
what I think
the hardest year of my marriage,
Yeah.
I say the exact same thing about.
Yes.
People have since said, well, didn't you learn so much? Didn't you grow so much closer? And my answer is no, if I could go back, I would not have done that.
Yes. And so I look at that and go, you are right. It builds resilience.
Yeah.
It made me more conscious, more capable, have to survive. And if I could go back, I would make it not happen. And I think that's what I hear from him too, because it was miserable. And I don't even know that I like the person I am on the other side of it.
That's interesting. What if you could suffer in a way? So that's the one difference between what you're saying about the marriage example I just gave and your example. I do like the person I am a lot more than I liked the person before.
Would you like the person that never did that thing better?
It's really hard, counterfactual. It's a good question. I think it's a really fair question. I mean, you and I have talked about this. Was there another way to learn it?
Well, the question is, did you have to learn it? Not everybody does.
Yeah.
So I get that, like, again, am I sitting on the other side of it going, I probably need, but to learn it to become what? In order to build a profitable business? Yeah, I needed to do that. But is that a necessity in life? I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, it's the game I've chosen, and I'm winning it more than I ever have before. But I find myself to be less hopeful, more naive, like less joyful naivete. Like, so
this is exactly the point. So I mean, doesn't this exactly go back to the conversation we were just having? Like,
but it's the game I'm in. And so I recognize that I'm consciously participating.
Why don't we go back to a world? Why don't you try to go back to the world where there's 6 or 8 people playing office mini hoop basketball in a tiny office? The thing you talk about in Kalo all the time, right? What if you could get paid enough?
But
what if there's enough money?
You can't undo the idea that I should have a 13-week cash flow forecast, and to think about like all the things like you.
But couldn't you have a 13-week cash flow forecast in that business and still be okay?
I mean, maybe, but
it would be a simplified business.
What it would do is highlight how dumb so many of the decisions are. Like, right? Like that's the thing about what it does is how stupid you are.
But I don't think the dumb decisions are the important part of that experience. I think the important part of that experience is the being in it with friends you care about. And I
think there's say like building a glass whiteboard that has an electronic on and off switch that makes it frosted and unfrosted because you think it's cool. And spending like $8,000 on it when you have like $100,000 in revenue total. You know, like that's so dumb. And I don't.
Okay, so then cut that out. Right? Like, okay, but the glass
part of it, it's like play ping pong for 4 hours a day.
Yeah,
is that a good idea.
Yeah, and you've still never beat me the entire time I've ever played. Yeah,
something about this like thing that you're in.
That's not true. Taylor's beaten me. Yeah, not that often though. Yeah, not that often. It's probably 50-50. I think it's interesting. I mean, this is really the most interesting thing to me because like it actually gets to like. You have one life. You like what are you going to spend all of your time on? Actually, for those of us in this world have this unique ability, and this is the ultimate privilege here, like, to actually make some decisions around that. Like a lot of people just have no ability to decide that.
Right.
And so given that opportunity, what is the actual best use of that time? I think is an important and pretty hard question. Because I think there is a world like if you think you're less joyful, if you think there's less of that, like I don't know, man. I think there's a world where you.
So I don't know. Like I look at my kids, and one of the things my wife and I reflect on is like the frequency of how often kids laugh relative to adults, and it's just their day is frivolous and stupid and funny, and all day long they laugh. But at some point in your life, like farts aren't quite as fun.
Yeah, I don't know. I've been making that joke for 40 years. It's still pretty funny to me.
It's just like it just fades a little. Fatigue.
No, I get it. Yeah.
And so I don't know that there's a way to maintain the novelty of it all as you go, but there's a richness to it, and that I think is a different kind of appreciation that I have, and I feel proud of my capacity, and that I didn't break or quit.
Yeah.
So different than maybe joy and laughter. There's a different sensation.
Yeah.
They're both, I think, in some ways valuable or experientially good that I like. So I don't know. Yeah, you try and sort it out. I just don't know in this idea. Like we hold up the Jensen Yang and we look at it, and
I don't.
I've heard Elon Musk say this too. Is like you don't want to be me.
I don't want to be Elon Musk.
Right. But
I don't want to be Elon Musk.
Like societal vision.
Yeah. But this is part of the point. Is to me is like this is the reason why my mentality is fix the next thing next. Is like I don't want to be Elon Musk. I don't want to be Jensen Yang. I don't care about it at all. Now, I think the thing that's really interesting.
You stepped onto a treadmill that takes you in that direction, and you're just not.
Why? Why don't I just keep doing the thing? I mean, I don't know.
Business is growing.
Sure. But at some point, I do think the point of life is to maximize your joy. I think that's the whole point of all of life. And so I think if you are actively doing things that are not going to maximize your joy, and I think there's a short-term, long-term thing here. This is in some ways the hedonistic paradox or whatever, right? Where it's like a lot of things people think will maximize their joy actually maximize their suffering, right? Heroin, for example, would be an example, right? So, and that's the constant trade-off for almost everything in life, actually. So I do think that, and this is where I think the broader game of life subsuming the smaller game of business is challenging. But I mean, you got this in our prep for this, and it made me think about it. Like, one of the reasons I think that is that I think I'm very good at selling e-commerce products on the internet. Elon Musk is creating brain chips that make it so that people whose brains don't work, whose bodies don't work, I don't have that intellectual capacity. And so maybe what Elon Musk has to steward in his mental capacity and his company building capacity is different than me.
Could you run a $100 million e-commerce business?
Could I run it? Probably.
Could you be the CEO?
Probably. But how important is that in the world? I mean, I guess the way you would make the way you would make the argument for the importance of that is if the product was really meaningfully helping people's lives, or if the culture and the people and the jobs that it created, some of those things really were going to make a meaningful impact on the world. I think those things could all be arguments in favor of some of that, and that those things in some way would ladder up to a sense of joy that I got by creating impact in the world. Because one of the things I'm assuming here is that like impact on the world generates joy. Yeah, but
and one of the other things I think I'm trying to be conscious of too is that one of the things I've learned along the way, and I've heard this from a lot of people, is that it's not harder to do something big than something small. You're just aware of your.
That's interesting.
Do it. So
that's interesting. That's really interesting, actually. That's actually really interesting.
Yeah, our landlord back when we were at Quail, you remember Nima? Just an amazing human, and he and I have stayed close. And so
I didn't know that.
We look at deals together sometimes, and we're looking at a deal right now, and we were on the call, and it's 50 million in revenue, 4 million in EBITDA, and he's just like, this is just not worth our time. He's like, it is no harder to solve this problem than it would be to solve a business at 15 million in EBITDA. Let's just stop. And I was like, whoa, like
that's really interesting.
I would never have that conscious awareness of that reality, and so I would persist in the smaller problem. And that's where I go, oh, that's somebody awakening me to a different reality that I'm just not aware of.
That's very helpful.
So that's where I go, like, well, am I playing this game because it's just the only one I'm in and know?
Yeah.
Or am I playing it because of some like deeper truth? And I think it's mainly because I just don't know.
I think that's the best challenge to my approach that I've heard from you tonight. I think that's really helpful. Yeah, I think it's really good. Because if I could actually maintain a level of work not eating up my entire life.
Right.
And
10x you're earning.
Yeah, but even that's not even really the main point. Sure, yeah, right. Like I think that's a pretty interesting idea. And actually, I mean, I've hung out with the Simple Modern guys a lot. I've been to Oklahoma City a few times. Like they're a good example of that. Like they live super normal working people lives. They're not crazy work obsessed, and they just have a huge thing making they are really serious. They shut down their whole company for a week every year and have a generosity summit where they bring in all their giving partners. And I mean, they're really serious about their generosity goals. And yet at the same time, it's not their whole lives. I've talked to the people about parenting as much as I have about anything else, so.
ClickFunnels guy, I forget what his name is.
Russell Brunson.
Russell Brunson has the metaphor of the car that you get in, right? It's like we all push down on the gas, and it's like it takes the same amount of effort to push the gas.
That's really good. Yeah. It's really good.
Some of them go way faster than the other.
Right. But that was his comment to Alex Formosi too, right?
Exactly.
Like you're playing the wrong game. Yeah.
And so I think a lot about that. It's like we all got in a car, and you got in the agency car because you knew me, but it
was just network, and it's easy.
That's the one you got in, and same thing for me. I was like, oh, I went to Lucid Fusion because Zubin invited me into it, or I got into Power Balance because I knew Josh. And it was like, so we walked into these cars, and it was like, oh, but it wasn't because we thought it was the best option.
No, we didn't. No, there was no cold analysis. Yeah. Okay, so let's do something quicker.
Okay.
And then we'll go into some of the fun things. Okay, quick one. Tactic that you're interested in right now. What's a tactic that you are excited about on a pure tactical level? Like just like give some people something that's just fun.
So
and good.
Not excluding.
Oh yeah, this is a good one.
Yeah. So not excluding your entire customer list from meta ads.
Okay. Go. Yeah. This is good.
So especially for a more mature business, like let's say you get to the 20 million plus range where you have hundreds of thousands of customers or tens of thousands of customers, but a lot of them have lapsed. Like this, one of the things I think that is really true is that people assume that their customer file like grows up into the right forever. And numerically, the number of customers you have does, but the ones that are likely to purchase again do not.
Yeah.
Actually, the vast majority of them are never coming back. And if you only trying to communicate to them via email, they haven't opened an email in years and they are not communicating with you, and you're actually actively excluding them from your ads.
Yeah.
Now, I'm as big a proponent as new customer revenue as anybody, but a thing that I have seen. So we had a customer that came to us saying, my existing customer revenue is down. And I think part of it is because you are not speaking to my customers in ads. And I'm mad about it. I want you to speak to my customers in ads. And I said, fair. Here's what I think the steps are. And so we deployed two things. One was to narrow the exclusions down to only active customers. And then to even with the active customers on key moments after the email has gone and has gotten through 36 hours, we deploy ads to the active customer.
Yeah.
And it's made a meaningful difference. And it did two interesting things. One, it improved the overall efficiency of the ad account a ton, which is obvious because now you're including lower hanging fruit, but it also improved the new customer acquisition efficiency. So this is the interesting part to me, which is that it seems, and again, 5 weeks into this test, that the increased signal that you're getting from the conversions on a lot of these campaigns are getting more volume to both new and existing customers at a greater efficiency.
Yeah, interesting.
And this is a contention I've heard. Tom, who runs...
Your friend of MySpace.
No, from one of the founders of Chubby's, he and I would argue about this a lot.
Uh-huh.
I've had people tell me that they believe that the inclusion of existing customers is actually an important signal for Meta for the sake of optimization for new customers.
Super interesting.
And the early evidence in this case is like it has improved both AMER and MER, existing and new customer revenue in the process.
I have a client where before I was working with, I don't think she minded me saying this, Nazrin, Mixed by Nazrin. I'm going to have on the show very soon. Update, I did my first opening of the books with her. Very small business at the time. When she was running things herself, she was running ASC, didn't even have an existing customer list excluded. She didn't even know what it was.
Yep.
She just, entrepreneur, figuring it out.
Yep.
Amazing. Building business. So I did a cohort-based forecast on her customers, and we just kept missing her returning customers. The only client I have, we were way low. Okay. Like her returning customers were coming in. My forecast, let me just be as clear as possible. I was over forecasting her returning customer revenue.
Yep.
So I kept saying that. And of course, one of the first things I did when I got the account was I set up her customer exclusions.
Yeah.
And at some point I realized, wait a minute, she was not excluding her existing customers before. And of course, it's an apparel business. She was launching new products all the time, isn't that right? And so we went back and started including existing customers, and it immediately made a tangible, incremental impact on her existing customer revenue. Immediately. And in this case, okay, and I think this is one of the categories where this makes the most sense because you're releasing new products all the time, and the reality is people are going to not pay attention to your emails. They're not, and they're just going to forget about you. They just don't care. There's too many things to do. So I think it makes all the sense in the world for these businesses that are releasing new products all the time to go and do this. So yeah, and it now it didn't get all the way back to our forecast. And I think there were some seasonality things in that too, but it definitely made a meaningful difference, and it showed me really clearly that existing customer spend was meaningfully incremental.
Yeah. Now I think the thing for me that's really clear is that
where I wouldn't do this is like Bamboo Earth skincare,
right?
Where it's like it's probably something where like if they've churned, they just aren't using the product anymore. So I don't know. Maybe if they've maybe at the churn level, I would still include them. Right.
You have to be. It's different kind of. Like I think
I'd be careful about it. Supplements.
Yeah. If you're always releasing new products, like customers need to know about that, and keeping them aware of it is really, really valuable.
Do you hold them to a different ROAS target?
So the problem is like inside of an ASC, it becomes harder to draw those distinctions. So we were playing with a lot of different ideas and of what should the. We're playing with the idea of an
Do you know about? Yeah, totally. Do you know about manual bids? Have you ever heard of those?
Bid multipliers, which is the thing that a lot of people are talking about these days. But yeah, we're exploring right now. But what I found right now is that the ASC efficiency on new and returning customer revenue went up at the same time. So it wasn't actually one was the expense of the other. And that's really the key is that you still have to keep an eye on the efficiency of your new customer acquisition.
That's a good argument for ASC too.
Yeah. And ASC is really interesting, right? Because you can set the exclude, like when you say existing customer cap, what it references as your existing customers is whatever you put.
Exactly, right. So you can really make that whatever you want.
That's right. Exactly. So you could make that only active customers. Yeah. You want to exclude 100% of active customers, and then you're still getting. So that's going to call those new in ASC reporting.
I like the idea that that's going to increase the signal to both.
Yeah. That's
very interesting.
Right. Especially if you're a newer brand, I think is another place where I would just like probably not be that concerned with it. There's this idea that like Meta is going to over deliver only to your existing customers. But the reality is at some point, the next incremental purchase that Meta can get is not your existing customer.
That's right.
Right.
So actually for this, for Nazrin, like the way we're doing our existing customer bidding now is we have an ASC. Yeah. It's the only thing I auto bid, and I just keep it at a low budget.
Yeah.
And because I want Meta to have essentially a different value for existing and new customers. And by keeping it at a low budget, I get a little bump on new customers, but Meta also can give the next deliverable or ad delivery to the best place, which sometimes is not an existing customer. Yeah. And so what ends up happening is like we get, a 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 or whatever it is for new customers and like a 5-to-1 for existing customers. And I just kind of maintain the budget there. I'm not really trying to squeeze the perfect efficiency with a clear bid cap target or whatever. I don't have that target in that case. I'm just sort of monitoring basically to make sure that's the case. That still may be under optimized. I think would be reasonable to say that, but it's fine for now. I think, Yeah. Okay, here's mine. Long form explainer. Let me tell you about it.
Like that should be your bio in your Twitter account, by the way.
So
Andrew Faris is
long form explainer. To be honest with you, I've thought about the possibility that the best upside for AJF growth, to come back to the other thing, is for me to become a long form explainer factory.
Yeah.
Because people suck at it.
Yeah.
And I think my one core talent in creative is clarity. Essentially,
That's an interesting, that conflicts with the idea of long form explainer to me.
no, it doesn't. It's because all I do when I write long form explainer ads is attempt to explain as clearly as possible everything that a customer needs to know about buying this product. And here's the thing that people miss about this idea. It's not about how long it is. It's not. I call it long form because it's longer than most ads.
Yeah, so that's 6 seconds.
But I don't care if it's a minute or if it's 30 minutes. I don't care. If it requires 30 minutes to explain the product, then you should take 30 minutes.
Yeah. You like gave that hook opener on Twitter the other day, the idea that like, we are brand X and we make product Y.
So this is literally my number one ad hook right now. This is brackets product from brand. This is what it does. It is the exact same muscle that I exercise when I do this podcast and explain a concept. It is literally, there's no difference. When I go on this podcast and I say, here's why bid caps are better than auto bidding, and I try to tell somebody, convince them of that position, and I try to answer their objections as objectively as possible, and I try to give them clear validation for that, and then tell them what to do next. It's the exact same thing. And I think, now I do think, and I tweeted this the other day too, but like I do think there's somebody who probably has a different skill set than I do to be more creative and do the same thing. So the point to me is not even really that like you can't be creative. I think you can. I think people could probably come up with better hooks that would be more engaging than what I can write. I'm just not a creative guy. I'm not. But I think the thing that, here's the real core principle. I think the thing that people really forget is that in your meta ads, what you're trying to do is take somebody who has never heard of your brand or product and move them from there to getting their wallet out. And that's actually a pretty significant journey. And the thing they need to do that is information and trust. What people really underrate is how much, like, the thing that's standing between a customer and purchasing your product is they just don't know what it is. They just don't know enough about it. They don't understand what it does, why it's different, why it's good, anything like that. And so for me, like the idea of the long form explainer, it actually isn't even the only mechanism for doing this, but like basically taking that mentality and saying, how do I how do I tell somebody everything they would need to know to buy the product? That's right. So in the earlier days, I feel like I never hear this term anymore, but people used to talk about VSLs a lot, video sales letter. And that idea was like to take the direct response marketing style of like a sales letter and apply it to video, right? And those were often like the sort of Mashable style text on screen.
Well, no, video sales land. So
video sales letter is what I always heard.
Video sales lander.
No, I heard it as an ad concept. I mean, maybe we heard of two different things.
So this I think is the principle, which is what is everything the customer needs to know in order to make a purchase. Okay, and that might be how it fits, what the return policy is, the price. It may be a long list of things. And the question is between the ad and the landing page.
Oh, I don't care.
You have to cover all of them.
Exactly. I don't care which one you do it on as long as you can do it.
That's right. So if you go long form ad, then you should drop them directly into the cart and you should make it as frictionless as possible. If you go clickbait ad, you better go long form lander. So there has to actually be a relationship. And what you're saying is, I need all this information to get to the customer before they make a purchase. And so you're going to just take the responsibility of doing that in the ad.
Yeah. And the point to me really is that like, I think this ad type is better than other ad types. And this is another thing I'd say is like,
the question is, what does the brand require? So if we go back to one of your favorite ad examples, the silicone binding ring for the Active Life product on white, that's all the information you needed.
I think that's exactly right. But
same thing with apparel. Product photos work.
So I am smashing an ad account right now, an apparel ad account with long form explainers, because it turns out there are all kinds of questions people have about their clothes. They have all kinds of questions about like, how does it fit and why is it now? This probably depends a little bit on the kind of apparel. So again, I'll just reference it because I don't think she'll mind at all. Mixed by Nazareth. The thing that has unlocked that is explainers. Now she's selling jumpsuits. So there are all of these questions about how jumpsuits fit and about how the buttons are versus the zippers and how stretchy they are. And there are these questions that customers have. And we have massively unlocked that ad account. Literally, we don't make any other ads besides long form explainers for her right now. She now knows the thing and she just goes in and just like every day, it's just like another product. And she takes her denim this and her spring collection that and just goes boom. And it's massive unlock. And I think this for some of these things now. I think if you were Fresh Clean Threads and you were selling a gray t-shirt, which is what I'm currently wearing, or this sweatshirt, probably not.
There's just not enough long form.
But I might still say something I might try it still. I might try something that still got there, and it might be only 45 seconds. You're right. It might be shorter. But even in that case, what I might do is try to make the explainer about the unique mechanism that makes, which is a concept that I had Cody Plofker and I talked about on a podcast that he referenced. That I still think the thing that makes Fresh Clean Threads good is that it fits really good every time, and it's a solid color that fits right. Like that might be the thing that I say. In that case, it's not really the feature of Fresh Clean Tees or Fresh Clean Threads is that I'm a dude who doesn't really like shopping that much. And if I have a shirt that fits right every time, I'm just going to buy 50 of them. Right. And so that's probably what I would sell in that case is it wouldn't be about like exactly the fit, whatever. It would be about that kind of thing where it's the value proposition is that I don't have to shop. So, but I think, and so it can be whatever relative to the value you provide. But what I think is that like brands just consistently underestimate how much information people need about their product.
So one of the things I'd be interested in, and I don't know if you could pull it up right now, is that how many people actually watch this thing?
I have no idea, and I don't care.
For as long as you think they do.
I don't think they necessarily do. Well, so actually no. So the problem is the reason this won't work is because you don't know about how long purchasers watch for. Because what's possible is that only a small subset of people watch them. But this is another thing that's really important. You're not talking to everybody. You're only talking to a tiny little subgroup of people.
But it's all relative to other ads. So if there were some subset of people that make it through 10 minutes of the video, and those are the purchasers, then the average time would go up. Still, the average watch time would be higher. And maybe it is. And in a long form video, you're going to have higher average watch time than a short one. Anyway, it's just in the nature of the possible.
Sure.
But I do think one of the things that I constantly find, and this is actually my issue with the idea that comments matter all the time, is that we substantially overestimate how often people actually engage for more than a fraction of a second.
More broadly, you get a click-through rate of 2%, you're over the moon.
Exactly.
That's really, really good.
That's right.
That is 2 out of 100 people who will see your ad. And then of that group, if you get a conversion rate of 4% for many businesses, 2%. Exactly. Right, so which means you are simply not talking to everybody. And this is part of the thing about the long-form explainer. What people will say is that, like, come on, nobody's going to watch that. And the answer is no, you're not going to watch that. But neither are 98 out of 100 people. And that's fine with me. What I care about is that one subset of that one subset. Now we're talking about what? Like, I don't know. I'm having trouble walking back the math, but like 4 out of 1,000 people or something like that who are going to actually purchase off of this. What's
happening is that, like, you remember
what's happening is that all my ads work. Taylor, shut up.
Remember the Adrian Bamboo Earth video?
Yeah.
Okay, so Adrian, who works at CGC, she created a piece of UGC.
Yeah.
And it's like her talking for 2.5 minutes.
Dude, the best Bamboo Earth video ever is a woman talking for 6 minutes.
Okay, right. But
going through the whole routine.
The question is it what happens from second 5 through 6 minutes that matter, or is it what happens in the first 5 seconds?
So both. So here's what so you do have to hook people still. And so part of the strategy here is you build, every time you launch an ad, you launch it with 5 to 10 variations on the hook. And I think, now the reason I know that's not the only thing that's the mechanism for it is that I do that with every kind of ad type I make. And long form explainers ultimately work. So I always launch a bunch of variations of one ad type.
Here's my challenge to you, and I wonder if Nazar will.
You can't possibly think that long form explainers don't work.
I just don't think that the long form part matters as much as you think it does.
Well,
I don't think anybody watches it. I think that what happens.
I think it's better than you think. I'm going to pull it up.
Took 5 seconds of all of those long form explainers and ran them as ads for 5 seconds, you might get some leads. That would be my hypothesis.
Nah, that's wrong. That's wrong. You're stupid.
Run them for 5 seconds. And so I'll give you an example. One of the things I think about my Bridges content is I don't actually think anybody watches the whole thing.
No.
I think that
nobody watches my videos.
It's like a cultural signal that like the video starts to matter, and you turn it on for a few minutes enough to say that you understand the content, and then you're like, oh, I'm supposed to like this. I like it, and I know it now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how, like, the idea that people consume long form content, I think is it's really, really small numbers.
Okay, so I've got on this video
50% is 2,000 people out of how many impressions?
Well, let's do it as a cost per 50% view on like a 3-minute video, right? 11,185.
So we're looking at the ad account right now for the great podcasting.
Yeah.
So I've got video plays at 240,000 video plays, right? And I see 2,000 people.
So I'm paying $5.45 to get people to watch 50% of that video.
Yeah.
That feels pretty cheap.
So that you would have to convert. What's your CPA?
On this one, I don't know.
You'd have to convert 10% of those people in order to make that worth it?
Well, I don't know. I mean, let's see how long this video is. If I'm paying, I'm willing to generally pay a couple bucks for a click. $5.40 for this is a 3 minute
and a half video.
This is 3 minute and 20 seconds.
You would pay someone $5 to watch this for a minute.
For a minute and 45 seconds.
There's no way that you would, if I gave you.
Dude, what's the average amount of time somebody spends on a website? It's like a minute? It's less than So I'm getting a minute 45 before they even get to the website.
You're paying them $5 to do it. That's like minimum wage in the United States. You could get them to work in an hour in Subway for that much money.
I don't understand what you're saying. I mean,
I'm just saying, is that really a good value? $5 for a minute?
Yes, it is. You know how I know it's a good value? Because this ad is smashing the universe.
You're assigning it to the idea that the long form value matters. I just think that I don't care.
I don't care all about length.
You have less than 1% of people that watch it for 50% of the time, and your conversion rate is higher than that.
I don't care at all about length. Length is not what matters to me. What matters to me is that it explains.
The name of it is literally long.
I know it's actually not named very well. I need another name.
How about just clear explainer?
Clear explainer is fine. That's fine.
Great.
The point
we just created Unity.
In this case, the point is not that it's long. The point is definitely not long. I should be crystal clear about that. I don't care about it being long. I care that it gets the information across that you need to make the purchase.
Because I think that your bad 3-second play video might be your best ROAS.
Well, who cares about ROAS? What matters is spend, Taylor. This is manual bids, bro. What are you talking about?
The highest spend is on
this. So this one was yesterday. Yeah, yesterday this one spent.
No, yesterday.
Well, because it launched 3 days ago, bro. Yeah. What do you want?
I want this month. Okay, and I want to see most spend.
Oh, wait, sorry. Did you want to see that?
Oh my gosh, one of them is way better than all the other ones.
It's because I run super consolidated campaigns.
You're running to shops, and that's how you win in this game.
It's because I run to campaigns. No, look, all of them are spending.
Scroll to the right.
What do you want?
I want to see the cost per 3-second view for the best ad.
Oh, no, it's not going to do that. You
don't have that in your columns?
No.
When it's like your whole thesis is predicated on long form video?
I could literally put the only thing in my column being amount spent, and that would be fine with me.
But you don't.
No, but it's because AOP matters, because I'm running cost of bid caps. And so, yeah, come on.
Where's my cost? Where did you just get rid of it?
No, it's right here. Cost per 3-second view. 9 cents.
Okay.
On the top spending one for the last month. The one I just showed you a second ago launched 2 days ago. So it was a new product.
37 cents.
10 cents across the board.
Through play, that's
15 seconds or the full length of the video. Okay. That's really good. 50 cents for a 15-second view? You're wrong, Taylor.
That's not bad.
Taylor, you're wrong. The point is, no, you're wrong. Customers need to. So I think the thing is, I'm dealing with brands that are often sub 10 million. Right? They're trying to create their space in the world. I don't know if I think this is the thing that matters for brands that you're dealing with, which are all plus 10 million, right?
I don't think people I think you assume humans are this logical, thoughtful group of people.
They're not at all logical.
They're idiots. We're all idiots. I got a text from Driveline about a baseball bat, and I've just accepted that they're the truth, and so I just bought it without even reading what it was.
Yeah, it's because brand matters. That's not news to me.
Well, exactly. So it's just sort of oh, I'm in.
Yeah.
I don't know what they said.
That's because Driveline's one of the most trustworthy brands in the world.
Well, and so all these surrounding things that have
they literally run everything they do through a scientific test.
Exactly. So I'm in. Whatever you sell.
Are you trying to convince me right now that brand is important? Of course brand is important.
I'm just saying that the influence on purchase decisions is not this
No, it's information.
Really
people
information.
Have all of these questions about the product. They have all of these.
No, they don't.
Yes, they do.
They're not that thoughtful.
No, yes, they do. You're totally wrong about this. When they.
Some people have questions.
Yes, you know who does.
A lot of people buy them without them being answered.
You know who has questions? Real customers.
Think about the checkout aisle of Target. Do you know what they do?
Yeah, but Target's a magical.
Nothing. They just put it in front of you. Because you're standing in line and you go oh yeah,
but give
me the candy,
gigantic
I'll take it.
How much do they charge for the candy?
$4.
$4
for a Appa Zappa? I don't know.
$4, bro. Your Target is ripping you off.
A bottle of Prime at the local Little League snack bar is $4.
Yeah, that's because everybody knows the snack bar prices are inflated. Come on.
I'm just saying, whatever it is.
No,
so much even that, we know nothing.
This is a $200 jumpsuit.
I was listening to Jordan Peterson and Destiny argue.
Yeah, I heard about this. I didn't watch it, but I heard about it.
One of the things, I like Destiny, and I just don't really like Jordan.
I don't even know who Destiny is.
Yeah, but one of the things he was talking about is this idea that he doesn't accept any he doesn't trust any third-party entity. And he was like, what, those jeans you're wearing, are they leaking lead into your legs? Do you know? And it's like, no, of course you don't know, because you don't actually answer the questions to all the things that you presume you think you want to know about the things
That's
you're doing.
because they're not asking. Because customers are not asking if jeans leak lead into them. They assume that's not the case. What they want to know is if they are walking in their jumpsuit, does it make their legs feel funny when they, because the denim stretch is weird or whatever. That's the question.
I want to know, does their butt look good? And you answer that.
That too.
And so the image solved that problem, and so they're aspirational, and they click on it.
Well, so images and apparel also often work for that reason.
Yeah, they smash.
Right, that's the case. But I can tell you, I've run a lot of images in this account, and they have drastically underperformed explainers. And I've tried all kinds of different products, all kinds of things. So, and I do think some products are different than others in this respect in terms of how much explanation.
This is where I think probably our core fundamental divide between one another is that you think that there's a categorical kind of ad that works, and I just go, nonsense. It's a magic random 8-ball.
No, I think in many cases, well, I'm actually coming around this. I think there are some things that are consistently true and creative, and I don't think it's totally random. Yeah, I think there are things that are consistently right and consistently wrong. And do you know why I think that? It's because I have a very simple creative playbook that I run with all of my clients, and it's because I don't know how to do anything else. And every time I try to go outside of those things, it doesn't work. So that's what I do. I just do those things all the time. It's true.
We're talking such a small sample size.
100%. I completely. So one of the things I'm considering right now is creating creative as a service.
I was just going to say,
I'm becoming fired.
If this is true, then you have if this is true, you have an endlessly valuable business.
I couldn't agree more.
Because it's a very simple rubric.
I'm actively exploring this right now. So I have a client who I've done some coaching for, where they're deciding, should we invest more ad dollars in this business or an aggregator? Should we invest more dollars in this business or not?
Yeah.
And with one of their brands, and I said, I don't think you've seriously tested creative. Let me try something. We'll scratch each other's back here.
There's one instance that I've seen of this in my whole life. Actually, I take it back. There's two. There's a group right now. One of the founders of Athletic Greens is running a video agency in the supplement space.
Yeah.
Okay? And I think what they do is
that's a good example. It's a narrow framework.
Very narrow. Yeah. And the rule is you have to let me say whatever the hell I want.
Yes. Right. Yeah.
And so it's all DR brands that are like, yeah, you hit it, you scale it, say whatever you want. And they hack the psychology of social in a way that provokes people and angers them and repeatedly solves the problem of getting people to watch this content and engage with it at a massive level and sell the crap out of product.
Yeah.
And they're really, really good at it. And I actually think that they have a mechanism.
But see, that works completely against what you're saying, which is that it's a magic 8-ball.
No. But in a narrow band, there is a specific type of social content that when someone is allowed to behave that way, they can pull on human psychology in a way that allows you to generate consistent results for more people than not. Sorry. I know, I'm yelling. It keeps typing quieter onto the spreadsheet.
Well, I don't want to tell you to shut up.
You could.
My neighbors are going to be mad.
And I've actually had long arguments with them on the phone about how they think that they have some framework for this.
Yeah, because you're probably wrong. This is so funny.
They're so wrong.
Taylor, what's so funny about this is that you are the king of there's no objective truth.
There's none.
Except that you are claiming objective truth here.
What?
Which is that there's no objective
truth is not objective truth.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
Of course it is. It's a claim about things.
It's the absence of a reality.
No, what you are saying is there's no consistent way to make ads work, and that is a strong claim about how reality actually is.
So then for the sake of debunking this like stupid counterintuitive or counterfactual thing that you're doing, I'll just say that I have never experienced it, and I've experienced it.
That's fine.
And so it may exist, but in the event that it does, it's such a small percentage of the realities that you shouldn't try and find it.
So I think it's possibly right. So this is how
same thing. To me, it's the same thing. If the likelihood of success is 1%, I can acknowledge that the 1% exists and also say it's a bad idea.
Let me tell you about my experiment I'm running right now.
Yeah.
Because I'm not ready to go all the way in on this. Because I think I'm not an idiot. I think I've been around to the block a long time too and seen a lot of people make a lot of claims about creative.
Just do this for Bamboo Earth. Just solve my.
I'm actively exploring it.
This is super
I told
easy.
Dave this the other day.
We both have a massive financial incentive to solve this
problem.
If you can do this,
I told Dave the other day.
Do this for Bamboo Earth right now. And everybody listening, Andrew has a claim about his capacity to guarantee creative success. And so it's very simple. He owns a brand. He has a massive financial incentive to solve this problem.
I own less than 1% of a brand.
And if it sells for $100 million, then you make $1 million.
Yeah.
So solve it. And I'll go, great. I'll tip my cap and go, Andrew's right
Taylor,
in this instance.
Taylor.
But it hasn't happened.
Taylor.
Why?
Because, as you know, as the owner of a business, it takes time to scale up processes and operations.
Yeah, processes. I don't need a process. I need one ad.
Do you know what? No, you need a process for ads. Everybody knows.
I need a bunch of tries? Oh, so it's a random game? And
you're playing volume? You need multiple hooks, and you need one core ad. Okay.
Great. Make it.
I'm doing it right now.
Okay.
Okay,
Dave,
so listen,
please come get
Dave is next after this. So this client has an aggregator. They're deciding what to do with this business. I've told them, let me take a crack. I don't know if this will work.
That's not what you're saying.
It is what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I think it will probably work. I think it's probably the best ad type. I think if you give me a crack at this, I think it has a better chance than anything you've done so far. That's what I think.
That's what you've been saying about everything since I met you. That's what makes Andrew special, is that he delusionally believes that about everything he's doing.
Yeah. And you keep promoting me and giving me better jobs.
Well, I don't have a chance to do that anymore.
I know. That's because I quit. Yeah. Okay, but look.
So this is easy. This is easy. You do this for Bamboo Earth, and I will come back on this broadcast, and I will say,
this will be the next quarter. Yeah. So literally, Dave is next. Dave can tell you. I can show you the Slack receipts. I told him he is next on my list after this project that I'm doing right now because I want to test it. Because
Ian, Dave, and Sadie are getting their ass kicked.
Look,
and if
they're not getting their ass kicked.
In the short term, they're solving it. But right now.
So here's the thing. If I actually can solve this, what I've begun to build is a roster of creators who can create the ads for me. I will add editing talent to my team if I need to get the video editing happen. And I will begin to create a CAS business, creative as a service.
Have you seen my Outliers episode? Have you ever watched it?
No, I don't watch your content. Come on. The last person's content I need to watch is yours. I talk to you all the time. I know everything you think.
So here's what the claim you're making. I just want to put it in context. So Bamboo Earth. So my Outliers episode is what I do is I pull every ad that's ever run and the average spend per ad.
Mm-hmm.
And then I look at the one that is the highest spending ad of all time.
Mm.
So we look at the mean, median, mode, and max of all of your ads ever run.
Okay.
Scatter plot, show it.
Great.
And the point is that the outlier ad is 1 in 10,000.
Yeah.
So Bamboo Earth has an ad that's spent 600,000. Yes.
Yeah.
It's a version of Annie, but it's
I shouldn't. It's not say her name.
Oh yes.
I don't know.
But the point is just that Dave is by all accounts really smart.
He's great.
I think so.
I agree.
Sadie, by all accounts, great designer.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Ian, by all accounts, smart dude, great making things. And they have all made over the course of the last 5 years, and including a time period where you were there and running the ad account.
Yeah, but I wasn't good at it.
Oh, he was bad then. Okay.
I was.
He's good now, bad.
Bro, we've talked about this a lot. I give myself an F for running it.
But as a CEO, not as a Facebook creator.
I think I was pretty bad at Facebook then.
Okay,
That's
fine.
the actual
you
truth.
Sucked. Whatever. I'll concede your point. So you've made 10,000 ads. 10,000.
Yeah.
That's like an insane number.
Yeah.
And you're sitting here saying, yeah, I'll do the 1 in 10,000 thing. I'll do the thing that
I don't necessarily
no one else could do. But at what level do you think you'll perform, and what does it mean to be like the best ad type or a really good ad? Is I just go you know what, you're going to be another dot on the scatter plot. That's the much more likely scenario.
This is actually the best argument against this tactic, which is that the reason my thing works is that I'm doing it for brands that have very immature ad accounts.
They have less dots.
Right, exactly. And so it's moving the things forward for brands that are pretty small. But what I'll say is those brands are getting meaningfully more spend than Bamboo Earth and then other brands that have been doing it for a long time. And so I think there's a good argument that it is actually working pretty well. Now, I think the question where I'm not as confident is for the mid 8-figure brands, but not for 5 years that has a bajillion ads in their ad account already. I think it's possible that they've already kind of found that, because I also do believe that it's not the only ad type that works. And so I certainly don't believe that. And so, but I think it's something that more people should try earlier on. That's what I think.
I don't even have a problem with it's
a framework
sort of bury around ugly ads.
But see, this is a good example. But it's a helpful framework for people, I think.
But it's the idea that Post-it ads are going to, in some way, disproportionately outperform every other ad is just not true. Now, what happens is the story you hear, because that's the only thing worth sharing, is every one that works. And so every time it works, it's survivorship bias. Yeah. Every time it works, someone tells Barry how awesome it is that it works. And 10,000 other times, but it's tried and failed.
You've got
just like every other.
Yeah, what I think is about that is that the reason people should run that kind of ad is cost to impact ratio. It's very cheap to produce. So and that you can produce them at meaningful scale. So I have added to my team a person in the
But the value in that equation is how cheap it is, not its likelihood of success.
So it's both, because the cost and impact both matter. Because I have they do, because I've run a lot of different kinds of this kind of ad, and they pretty consistently get some level of spend. So they're not always the big super winner in the ad account, but they almost always get some spend, certainly relative than the other thing. So it is lower cost and it is higher impact.
It's not higher impact.
It is.
It's the same impact.
No, it is. No, you're wrong about
cost
that.
Makes it, no, it's
not.
not.
I'm telling you, you're wrong.
So let's
listen to me. You're wrong about that.
You're absolutely wrong. There's what. Let's say that every ad you ever launch has a 1 in 10,000 chance of being an Andy Reaper's ad.
Yeah. Okay.
You can create.
Stop saying
that could be that Bamboo Earth ad that makes it really awesome. Okay. That means that there's an expected value calculation that you can assign to that ad. If it's worth 600, if it spent 600,000, and let's say Bamboo Earth tries to run it at 1.5 to 1, then it's worth like $1 million. Easy math. That ad's worth $1 million. So you have a 1 in 10,000. Let's do some quick math here.
Okay.
So 1 divided by 10,000 equals 0.001 times $1 million. Means that ad is worth $100. That means if you can produce it for $50, you can produce ads for $50. Right. You have a very high expected value, and you should make 10,000 of them.
Yeah, right.
So this is actually what I believe about Facebook: is that's the game.
And so I think
it's not to assume that your ad has a higher likelihood of success. That's hubris.
I think it's both. Yeah, I think
then do math and validate it, because otherwise it's pure hubris.
No, I think that there is a difference in quality from some than others. And look, I just walked through this with another client. Yeah, I think there is a difference in quality. I think the idea that there's no skill here is it's entirely random. No, is that what you believe?
Yes. That you could grab any human, and that their likelihood of success of generating that ad, that 1 in 10,000, is basically the same across every single human. And when it's not, it's unknowable that it is. And so the best bet, the right bet to actually make, is to make 10,000 ads at $50 a piece.
I think you should make multiple bets. So I think you should do that, to be clear. I think you should do that. I think you should find a way to scale up production really cheaply for some ads. And then I think you should also invest in places where there's a better opportunity. And if the investment gets too high, you should do it. Because there's definitely a chance that long-form explainers don't work for you, right? So and those take real time and effort. I mean, it takes me a long time to write those scripts and all those things, right? So it costs money. So you shouldn't do that at a level where it costs so much that now it's a disproportionately bad bet. But I think that it's a better type because I see it work across every ad account I run.
Which is like 4 right now.
That's true, but I've also done it with coaching clients. I don't know. I think I've seen it pretty consistently.
You've been trumpeting this for like 8 months in total.
Yeah, I think many people are bad at it.
But
this is part of the point. I think people are insanely bad communicators. They cannot think clearly.
So then what are you offering them in the idea of deploying this strategy through their lens of being terrible?
So I have the same question for you about bridges.
Right.
People can't do what you're saying.
I don't think
you don't care. You should have them hire you to do it.
Exactly.
Yes. So
I'm doing is validating my authority.
I agree. And so I think it's possible that what I should build is a creative as a service machine.
You could be better than 1 in 10,000.
I'm going to test this because I think I could sell it all day long if it works.
Yes.
So I'm not ready to.
Except for the fact that you would have to scale it beyond yourself, which it all collapses at the end of that spectrum.
That's potentially true. And
which is the same reason why every creative agency.
Yeah, I think this is right too. What you're saying. Yeah.
The end result is you would have to not only be you yourself a unicorn, meaning that you could produce outcomes at a disproportionate level, you would have to repeatedly find people who are also able to do so.
Yes.
At a price that you could.
Here's one of my theories about this, and this is 100% untested. So this is just my theory, and you've probably heard me say this before, right? Which is that people partly pick the wrong people for creative. That this is a DR game, and what people go pick is designers and video people, and what they should pick is essay writers. That's what I think. And this is part of the problem.
essay writers are there in the world?
Yeah, I think that so I am seriously considering going to my alma mater, which is not very far from here, going to English classes. I'm considering going to the Great Books program, the honors program there.
Yep.
People who are reading Plato all day.
And we're back to La Masia.
What's La Masia?
Like the Barcelona training program.
Yeah. So, but the idea here is I want to find the people who are going to make no money writing persuasive philosophy essays in their lives.
Yeah.
And get them to write ads telling people to buy jumpsuits.
Is that easier, or is it easier to make a bunch of ads for
do both?
Bucks?
Why not? I have a person in. I don't know why you have to choose. I have a person in.
Well, you have to choose everything all the time because limited resources are ultimately scarce.
So I have a team member. I have an intern overseas who is not paid very much money.
Do you want to play your sponsor?
Right? More staffing. They've already been plugged in this episode. I assure you, yeah, they are amazing. Who will on a weekly basis deliver me 80 what I call text and context ads.
Not nearly. Okay.
But it's pretty good because I don't pay them that much because it's an internship. It's a step into the e-commerce profession for them.
Yep.
And so they're probably 19 years old and they go and like do this and it costs me very little money and I can produce a lot of ads for not very much money and I get the cost as low as I can.
Yep.
And I try to do that because if I can do that with letterboards and Post-its and whiteboards and the world is your canvas. Write on anything that you want. We're in my backyard right now. I want my children to write with chalk on the driveway and put a product next to it.
Yep.
And do that because it's regularly
not because it works.
Both. It's both.
This is the
both.
key. No,
they work too. They work too. I'm telling you, they work.
It doesn't. Imagine that this were true. Imagine the idea that a Post-it note made your ads better. How quickly a capitalistic society would instantly.
It is. It's happening very quickly.
It's
People
not.
are doing it all the time.
No, it's not. No one. The idea that this ad is making businesses better and helping people's ad accounts grow is just fundamentally not true. Go listen to Facebook. All we did all month was complain about how bad it is for everybody. This is just insanity. This idea that we are making some creative that has made. If it were true that I could write on a Post-it the name of my ad and make my ad account better?
Right now?
Absolutely not. Zero. I do it for zero.
Yeah, so then don't tell me it's not true.
No, it absolutely is
you
not
have literally zero data to point to this.
I have data that says that every ad format ever created produces roughly the same expected outcome.
That's possibly true. Yeah, I think it's possible.
They all go build this plot for every brand and tell me that you'll see that every ad is roughly the same distributed outcome, and then there's some random thing.
So what you're saying that's right is that like part of the reason the thing works is because it's cheap. There's no question about that. I think that's totally right, and I don't even want to begin to say that I disagree with that. But that is part of the advantage of this is that you can do it for very, very little cost.
You don't want to know what the best ad format ever created is?
Tell me.
The DPA. It is in every instance. Almost every instance.
But not scale.
No. Over the history of a brand, the ad creative that has generated the most revenue over time, and if you did it relative to its cost, is actually the highest return, not even close, is DPA. And
do you think are you assuming both upper and lower funnel there? Could you grow your brand on DPA upper funnel?
In a lot of categories, I think the answer is yes.
Yeah, I don't think that's totally wrong. Like, I think you're right that basically that can work very well, but I don't think it's true that. I don't think it would. I think I'll take my mix my Nazarene jumpsuit brand.
Do you run Daba for him?
Yeah,
you currently are running Daba.
Yeah,
and
it's fine. Not very much money. $100 a day to spend. It's not making a meaningful difference.
I'd have to check your accounts first.
You can check. You want to look right now? It's bid capped. It's exactly the same as everything else.
I just remember when we would run in Taylor Loft, that's all it was.
But see, I think that is exactly the difference, which is that once you get to a certain level of brand notoriety,
sure,
the values change in the ads that you create.
I agree. I don't disagree.
And that's because it's functionally retargeting.
Exactly.
Everybody already knows the brand.
Yeah.
And so
brand awareness is very
this is why I think long-form explainer is powerful, is because precisely exactly. You have to go from I've never heard of you to get my wallet out. And that's the thing that I think you're undervaluing here, is that it just depends on the stage of business. And this is why I think for a lot of your clients, I wouldn't
go back to Kalo and I just go that was not the experience.
But that client, that Kalo, so first of all, Yeah, Kalo uniquely had the ability to explain everything really clearly, really fast. And I'll say, I do have one brand right now that is a category creator brand that still images work really well. And it's precisely for the same reason, which is that like you kind of get it the moment you see the image. And
exactly. So I think the magic, the best ads actually do this thing.
But there's no objections. There's no objections.
Very concisely.
The jumpsuit, actually, customers have a lot of questions about.
But there was objection. What was the number one comment in every Kalo ad?
No.
This is as cheap as an O-ring. Why don't I just go to Home Depot and pay 3 cents?
Yeah, but that's because commenters are not customers. It's not.
Now we're getting back into you're going to get blown up by the tuning fork.
I know. It's not. In that case, it's just like who cares? That's precisely the kind of.
But that's the objection. My point is.
But that's not a real. It's not an objection. It's not a question about how does this do the thing I want it to do. Oh, the jumpsuit. Like people think they see it and they think it's cute. That's not the problem. The problem is I've tried a lot of jumpsuits. They don't fit right. I've tried a lot of jumpsuits that and so when she walks,
the headline was just like the jumpsuit that fits right.
It probably wouldn't work that well because people wouldn't believe that because I've already heard that a million times. But I don't know. Let's try it.
I'm just saying, like, my point is that
you're just wrong. You're wrong. It works. I do that all day long. This brand
today, you're off to a terrible start. I'm just saying.
It's 10:30 at night. That brand's on the East Coast. It's 1:30 in the morning there.
It's off to a terrible start. Shut the whole thing down.
Right.
Anyways,
okay.
We'll hire him to make long form displays.
You'll know. I will announce on this podcast if and when.
He's never going to actually launch a creative service because Andrew's just an influencer. He's not actually a service.
God, dude, that's like the worst thing you could say to me. Do you know how much the idea of me being an influencer? First of all, that might lead to a meaningful fight with my wife if I tell her that I'm an influencer. There's nothing I can imagine is worse. Okay, let's move on from who cares about Facebook ads. Family and fitness, was that the other topics?
Yeah, you don't believe that I'm going to do the 40-year-old combine.
I didn't say that.
What is your comment? Scroll down. What did you write? Scroll down to your side. You wrote, what will you actually do?
That's not about you.
Oh, I thought it was a response to my.
No. Tell me about the 4-year-old combine. Fitness, go.
Okay, so I turned 40 in 4 weeks, which you're not coming to, by the way. You're like, I'm sorry, I've got David Smoller and John Sickler.
They're coming?
They're coming to my party, and you're not even going to show up.
Friends from junior high?
Yeah.
No, I have another birthday party. Really? Cool. That would be amazing.
Yeah. But anyway, so I turned 40 in 4 weeks, and I've been thinking about like, okay, what would I want to be able to do at 40?
I turned 40 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, so you're already
4 weeks ago. Yeah.
So the idea was, could you do the 1,000-pound club, which is squat, bench, and deadlift combined over 1,000 pounds? Could I run a sub 5-second 40, and could I run?
Sub 5 seconds. Okay, great.
And then a sub 8-minute mile.
Okay.
So that was like...
That's a good mix of things, right? Because if you have the strength to do the 1,000-pound club, it's going to be harder on a sub 8-minute mile. But go ahead.
So that was like my
Have you heard about the CrossFit guy who did
500, 400, 300, 200, 100? Yeah, like the 4, 3, 2, 1.
Well, the one I had heard was a 5-minute mile, and then within 5 minutes did a 500-pound deadlift.
So I saw a guy that did a 500-pound squat, 500-pound deadlift, 400-pound squat, 300-pound bench, and 2 800s within a minute or something like that.
Yeah, okay, great, yeah.
Whatever.
Anyway, the idea is...
He was the only person in the world that ever...
Yeah, right. The idea is that like these things shouldn't both work.
Exactly.
Right.
So I was like, okay, well, what's a 40-year-old version? And I saw Sam Parr and do something like this, where they did a combine. Now, they did like the NFL combine, like broad jump, whatever, how many reps at 225. And I was like, oh, so that's an interesting thing. So I was like, oh, I think I'm gonna try and do this on my 40th birthday. See what I can do. So I don't know. I may tear my hamstring. I may die. So you're going to do it on your 40th birthday? Yeah. Do you think you'd be talking club right now? So I got to 990 the last time I tried it. So you could do it. Well, that was like 6 months ago, and I haven't been lifting as heavy. So I don't know. It's going to come down to my squat. But it's not my best lift, and it's going to come down to my ability to do that. What's your deadlift? Deadlift's like 450. I can deadlift a lot. That's great. Yeah. Okay. So I would not be able to do like my squat is hilariously bad. Yeah. My all-time max squat's like 225. Yeah. It's like terrible. You're so tall. I know. Yeah, I couldn't be built worse for squatting. The hardest part for me is actually getting the sub 8 minute mile. I'm a terrible distance. Is that true? Yeah. You couldn't do a sub 8 minute mile? I don't know. But you're fast. Yeah, I can run fast. That's why I think I can get the sub 5-second 40, but I don't think I can. The mile's actually hard. That is shocking to me. Yeah.
Do you think that's a willpower thing or like a
Probably.
body thing?
No, yeah, I'm probably
Willingness to suffer.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not into suffering.
So actually, this is a good question. How good are you at suffering in a workout? How mental are you?
My best.
You're a professional athlete.
Yeah, my best workouts are like AMRAPs. Like I can usually.
You do CrossFit as like a something like
I did the open for fun.
Yeah.
To try, but I don't.
You smashed me in the open.
I don't normally do. I couldn't do the muscle ups. So I couldn't do 21.3. Yeah. But it was so I do things like that, but not specifically CrossFit. I don't go to CrossFit. I work at my house.
But it's CrossFit-y. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know. I don't think I'm.
So why are you doing the 40-year-old combine?
Just to see I don't know what's it like to be a good 40-year-old athlete. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because the thing I'm actually trying to do is not die, but like that's really boring, and I don't know if I'm actually winning that game.
I agree.
It's hard to know because it's like 40 years from now, or hopefully.
Yeah. Plus you get a bad truck.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, try and do something else along the way.
Hope you don't, by the way.
Yeah, I know. But I also really don't want to get injured. Being injured sucks, and it's so impressive.
My great friend and the guy who programs our CrossFit workouts for our group, it's all. I mean, I'm 2 doors down from my neighbor who I work out with, who's got a rig drilled into his driveway. Another friend of mine lives 400 meters in the other direction. I know that because 400 meters is an amount you run for certain workouts. He programs for us, and his comment is, fitness is what does he say? It's a long journey to a distant horizon, and the slowest way to do that journey is to get hurt. Yeah. And it is the hardest thing. And there's a dude ego thing here, I think. Oh. I don't know. There may be for women too. I've only ever been a dude, so I don't know. But like, where you just have to be willing to like lift a little less and dial in your form a little bit more and all those kinds of things. Because
whether people going faster, go slower.
Yeah, that's right. You just have to be willing to just go like, and that's actually the hardest part a lot of times. And so I'm not that mental of an athlete. I think like when it gets really hard, I'm just like, I'm just gonna take a break. I'm not going to the CrossFit Games. I've accepted that. So yeah, but I think that comment has always been helpful to me, which is like the moment you injure yourself, you're slowing down your journey to get there. So like it's a helpful bit of feedback. So okay, that's cool. And you have to record back.
How it goes. Yeah, next time.
I hope you get it. That'd be awesome. You can get an 8-minute mile.
Yeah, I think I can.
You need a rabbit.
I do.
You need somebody to run it with you. I can run sub 8. Yeah. I'd run it with you. That'd be fun. I would love to do that. I can go. Well, there's a track down the street. We can go do it. I would love to be the rabbit for that. That would be really fun.
Right.
Okay. So I'm not fast per se, but I could definitely do that. Okay. Here's my fitness thing. My fitness thing is, will you actually do it? This is like the question about fitness to me for almost everybody is like, the trade-off between optimal and actual, essentially, which is like, so here's what I believe. From the best of my knowledge I have, I think CrossFit is one of the optimal ways to work out. It may not be totally optimal. I don't really know enough science to know, right? Like, I think when I look at what Peter Attia says, it seems like zone 2 is maybe more important than what a lot of CrossFit
max or whatever.
Yeah, right, exactly. So, but it seems to me that the basic logic of CrossFit being that like essentially you create a broad capacity across a lot of different domains over a very long period of time, and there's a nutrition component, a sleep component, all those things, is something close to optimal for the average athlete, right? If I'm not training for something specific. So great. Okay, fine. Whatever. If you disagree with me, that's fine. But I think there is also a really big difference between what you will actually do and what is optimal. Mm-hmm. And what definitely is not optimal is things that you won't do. So like when I got into CrossFit, it was not because I was convinced it was optimal. It was because I had never been a workout guy in my life. It was at Kalo. Mm-hmm. Kalo sponsored the CrossFit Games. So we started getting into CrossFit as a company. And I found that CrossFit had a couple things for me. Somebody told me what to do. Yep. Somebody told me how to do it. And it was gamified. Mm-hmm. I like playing sports. I don't really like working out. I like it more now, but I didn't really like the idea of going into a gym, sitting on a machine and like doing X reps for Y rounds was not appealing to me. It was boring. And so I just could never create a consistent habit around it. And that point, I think, is like the thing that is most striking to me as a 40-year-old dude now, watching my friends age, all those things. Yeah. Is like, I would love all of them to come do CrossFit with me. I think it would be good for them. I think they'd have fun. I think after they got through the first month of it, they'd feel really good. They'll just suffer for a month. And I think suffer's not a terrible word for that first month. But the thing that really strikes me is like, at the same time, if they will go play pickleball 5 days a week, and that's the thing they'll do really consistently, it's probably suboptimal, but it's a lot better than not doing anything. And it just seems to me that there's like, there's just like trade-offs with fitness. And so yeah, that's like the observation I watch. Like, whereas this friend who's talking about programs, our CrossFit workouts for us, is 52 years old. He is naturally, he would tell you, not a good athlete. He's just not a super athletic guy, but he's freaking shredded. And it's because he loves CrossFit. He's been doing it 4 days a week, every single week for like 15 years.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know what happens when you do that? It just works. Yeah. And so yeah, that's like my big fitness observation recently is like, and I think in our world, in the e-com world, like it's like a very optimized world. People listen to Faris, people listen to like, whatever. And there's all these people who are telling you exactly what, Peter T, Andrew Huberman, whatever. They're telling you what the right things to do are and the right way to do it and all that stuff. And that's great. If you'll go do that, fantastic. Go make it more optimal. If you're the kind of person who'll go make it more optimal. But for me, like, I also look at it and go like, small kids, there's only so many hours I have to work out. The time commitment matters. I'm just not going to run a marathon anytime soon, which would probably be optimal anyway. But like, and so like, that's like the big thing for me is like, what can you actually do consistently? That's the thing that I would push people towards, which is really hard for people.
What do you think determines what someone will actually do?
So this is the actual hard part. There's another layer of this, which is that like, actually what to do for fitness is not a very hard question, I think.
There's endless access to that.
Correct. The actual problem in fitness is doing it for people in terms of their health. And that includes their nutrition and sleep elements of things. And so what determines it is a hard question. I think it really depends on where they are on the health and fitness spectrum. I think some people just need a community to do it with. Yeah. They would like to do it, but they don't know where and how and with who. And if you give them an opportunity, they'll show up every time. Like, I have a friend who does that with us right now, who he's just kind of kept showing up. Yeah. And it's because there's friends to do it with, and he likes it, and he's whatever. I think there's other people who need something different than that, which is like, have you seen the Ben Affleck video where he's talking about alcoholism and he talks about 12-step? Have you seen what I'm talking about? He says, there's this come back suffering comment. He says, I think AA is great, but the thing that actually helps people get out of alcoholism is suffering. So you suffer enough, and that actually creates
the impetus for change.
And I think there's some people for whom that's the truth.
Yeah.
Which I say with no condescension, by the way. Life is hard.
I agree. I think that Dane has this formula. So Dane, who runs employee development and performance at CTC, he runs something called Men and Women with Discomfort, which is a fitness group that I've been a part of previously. And he has this formula. He says that change occurs if and only when your dissatisfaction times your planning is strong enough to create an impetus for change, right? So you actually have to increase dissatisfaction with your present state in order to create change. So it's sort of like when you've suffered enough, and I remember for me, there was this moment, and it's weird. It's like not even a big deal, but Josh's dad, so Josh, my partner at Worth, his dad was sort of like a second dad to me, someone who was really close to growing up. I remember one time I showed up at his house, and he made fun of me for being fat. And I remember leaving feeling like, wow, I feel really dissatisfied with how that felt. It became an impetus for change. And I think somewhere along the way, we all have a version of that where it's like, I am so unsatisfied with myself that I will now pursue change. And unfortunately, you can't actually offer them the positivity of the other side. You actually have to drive into the dissatisfaction piece that I think is what I watch people encounter. Yeah. And there's a weird so now how do you apply that to friends or somebody else? Do you try to harm them for the name of change? I don't think so, but I think that tends to be what humans interact with.
Right. Yeah. I think you're right. There's an element where people are so dissatisfied with their current state. Hopefully that happens before it really gets bad for them.
Yeah, exactly. Before it's a heart attack or whatever.
My battery's about to run out. I just discovered this.
Great.
So we need to do two things. Give me lightning round family observation.
Okay. And this is good.
Lightning round anything life observation.
Okay, so my family observation, where am I looking at? I wrote, playtime. So I have found that in my life, the thing at this point, I have twin boys that are 10 and a daughter that's 7, and between phones, screens, whatever else, this idea of intentional playtime that I participate in, where I go into a world to challenge myself to, whether that's shoot hoops, play hide and go seek, is potentially the most valuable thing I can offer them. That's a simple observation.
I think that's true. My family observation lightning round is, and this is terrifying as a parent, how much crap is caught, not taught.
Yep.
They are just watching what I do, and they're doing the same thing that I do, and it is terrifying.
Yep, totally. Little mirrors to your soul.
Go.
Broader life observation. So I've been reading Super Forecasters. It's a book that I like. Yeah. Brilliant challenge to the merits of what makes someone a good forecaster and how hard it is to outperform basic trend analysis, and the really rigorous standard that it requires you to say honest things about your ability to be predictive of the future. And I want to be good at this, and I want to be challenged in the ways that I'm frivolous in the way that I do this. So great book, super thought-provoking, and yeah, go read Super Forecast.
Okay, my life thing is that context switching is incredibly hard. And I work from home, so I finish at 5 o'clock, and I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old who want to play with me at 5 o'clock. I did a podcast episode about this, but in faith terms, in the Christian and Jewish traditions both, we talk about the concept of Sabbath. The idea of taking one day completely off every week is a monster context switch. It basically reinforces the idea that I'm not entirely a work person, and that there's other things I do where I literally I actually try to turn my phone completely off, and it just makes me present with there, and it reinforces for me the idea that there's more to me than just work. And whatever your work goals are, and whatever, the conversation we had earlier, I am astounded at how important it is for me every week when I do it, because it just builds this thing in me that reminds me that there is more to me than just work. And I really love work. I'm not saying don't work. Right? It's just that has just been really, really good. It's like a weekly context switch thing. So
I also think that's why I went back to the office. I think the distinction between home and work is actually matters.
It's really good.
All right, you're going to die. Yeah. Hey, thanks, man. I would love feedback from you guys. This was 3 hours long.
No, was it 3 hours? 2.
2.5, whatever. Oh, 2 hours. Not even bad.
Been here for a long time.
But let us know. What else would you want to hear? Is this annoying? Was it ridiculous? Yeah, maybe I'm off camera the whole time. I don't know. This was not our best production effort. But yeah, we're just normal guys, and this is our chance to hang out. Yeah.
Yeah, please do. We have a lot of conversations. It's fun to talk about. And hopefully that's not also an annoying podcast of two guys who think they're smarter than they are.
Well, we're certainly not.
Yeah. So, okay, that's it. Outro is coming next. You know where all the places to reach out to me or to Taylor?
Yep.
Thanks, man. Thanks for driving up.
Likewise.
Thanks so much for listening to watching a different kind of episode than I've ever done before with Taylor. I hope you liked that. I had a great time with it. And so I would love your feedback on it. As Taylor said at the end, we'd love to know what you think. The plan is to try to do these quarterly, a little bit more of a wide-ranging discussion, but trying to get tactical as well and get into some stuff that we otherwise wouldn't get to. So, you just listen to it. You got the idea. I have so much good stuff coming up. You should subscribe to this show. I have another Opening the Books coming up soon where I specifically coach somebody through a product release. So I'm going to walk through my whole approach to that, as well as I actually have an episode specifically about promotional calendar, product calendar. That's just going to be a Mia solo episode. So a couple things around there. If you've been thinking about releasing products to your customer or to your customers and growing your business, product and promotional moments, I've got a lot to say about that, and got really good episodes coming down the pike for that. Also, if you're new to this show, go back and listen to my last Opening the Books with Pretty Boy. Just came out the previous week to this episode. Hopefully by the time this gets edited, that will still be true, but it definitely will come out before this episode. So check out my most recent Opening the Books with Pretty Boy. A really fun conversation with a couple of really hungry, smart young entrepreneurs about how their business has grown and how it's going to keep growing via a bunch of stuff like supply chain management and better thinking around their LTV and continuing growth around their creative strategy. All kinds of stuff that are hopefully going to be helpful to you as well. As usual, tons and tons of screen sharing, showing their actual ad account, etc. If you have wanted to know how to switch from automated bidding to manual bidding, because you've listened to me talk about this, probably the best episode I've ever done in terms of showing exactly how that works in an account. So check that out. As always, give me some feedback. It's at Andrew J. Faris on Twitter, at Taylor Holiday on Twitter as well. Of course, you can go follow up with him. Podcast at AJF Growth is where to email me, and everything that I do you can find on ajfgrowth.com, where you can also sign up to get for free essential e-commerce resources from me. Don't forget, if you are trying to grow your business, to go do that with more staffing. If you need additional help on your team, look in the Philippines for incredible talent. Virtual assistants can be helpful. Virtual professionals can change your business. And my new sponsor, Billy, who is incredible, and you should be installing them on your site. If you're running meta ads, it's really that simple, really cost effective. Go Billy. Go to morestaffing.co/AF for more staffing. Go to billy.ai for Billy. Links are in the show notes as always. Thanks so much, and I'll see you next time.